welcome to the January 9th, 2024 public hearing and public meeting of the Landmark Preservation Commission. We'll begin this morning by taking attendance, and I'll ask our General Counsel, Mark Silverman, to call the roll.
Good, Bill.
Here.
Vice Chair Graham. Commissioner, we did the wrong thing. Hold on. Commissioner Chen. Commissioner Ginsburg. Here. Commissioner Goldblum. Here. Commissioner Chapin.
Here.
Commissioner Jefferson. Commissioner Master.
Here.
Commissioner Chu. Here.
Did you get Vice Chair?
I did. Yeah.
Good morning again, and welcome to our public hearing and public meeting today, January 9th. And this hearing is being held in our public hearing room at 1 Center Street. It is also being held via Zoom and live streamed on our YouTube channel if you would like to watch or participate remotely. We will begin this morning with a public meeting agenda to review applications that have already been heard by the commissioners that have already had a hearing and for which we've already had public testimony, and follow back today with revisions. And then we will move to our public hearing agenda to review new applications for work on designated properties. And I do want to note that the application for public meeting item number 3 has been withdrawn and is no longer the commission. This was an application to demolish the West Park Presbyterian Church under the hardship provision of the Landmarks Law. And I just want to note that the Landmarks Law includes a hardship determination as a safety valve to allow inappropriate work, including demolition, to alleviate a hardship. And it is a really important part of the Landmarks Law that both protects and strengthens the Landmarks Law. And that's why it's important that we review these applications fairly and thoroughly. And at the beginning of the application process, I committed to a robust and methodical process. The Commission has been steadfast in its commitment to determine whether West Park Presbyterian's application met the criteria for a hardship determination, undertaking a thorough and diligent review that engaged the applicants, independent experts, and the public throughout the process until the application was withdrawn. And I want to thank the commissioners for their hard work leading up to this point. I also want to thank everyone else who participated in this process. And though the matter is no longer under LPC review, the underlying conditions at the church haven't changed. And I sincerely hope that all parties can work together moving forward to find a positive resolution. So with that, I will turn it over to our Director of Preservation, Corey Harala, to take us through our agenda items.
Okay, thank you, Sarah, and good morning, everyone. We'll start today's Preservation Department agenda with public meeting items. First is public meeting item number 1, LPC 23-11767. This is an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 1686, lots 37, 40, and 42. 340 Malcolm X Boulevard, aka 340 to 344 Malcolm X Boulevard, and 188 to 202 Bainbridge Street in the Bedford-Stuyvesant Expanded Stuyvesant Heights Historic District. It's a commercial building designed by Tobias Goldstone and built in 1921, and a store and flats building designed by Morris Rothstein, built circa 1923, both reclad and modified post-1980 as a church, and also an empty lot. The application is to demolish the existing buildings and construct a new building. This was last presented at the public hearing of November 14th, 2023. No action was taken at that time. The applicants will present revisions to the proposal after we open the proceedings.
All right, and let's do that now so that the applicants can begin. Commissioner Hoffman-Smith, would you make a motion to open the proceedings? So moved. Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
So second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? You may begin the presentation.
Hello, good morning, everyone. As being said, this is our second presentation. We made multiple design revisions based on the comments received. I'd like to present them to you. we structured the format of this presentation in a simple way. We're going to show the previous version, the changes proposed, and the newly proposed changes. Just really briefly to refresh our memories, let's go over the context. This is a corner lot located on the corner of two streets, Boulevard Street and Boulevard. Two streets different in character. The Boulevard has a commercial character, and the Boulevard Street is a residential, story field, street. So this slide shows our neighbor across the street, number 2. This is the building directly across the street from the corner. Can you hear me well? Number 3 and 4, those are the corner buildings on Malcolm X Boulevard across the street. Number 6 is our immediate neighbor adjacent to our site. Number 7 is a large school building converted into multiple dwellings, which is 2 buildings down from our site, in very close proximity. Number 8 is those are the 3 buildings which, 3 or 4 buildings that adjacent to our site on Malcolm X Boulevard. Number 9 is directly across the street on Malcolm X Boulevard. Now this slide shows the existing church that is going to be demolished. Facade on Malcolm X Boulevard, number 10, and facade on Bainbridge Street.
If I could just interrupt you for a minute, I think the last time we saw this, the commissioners unanimously supported the demolition of the existing buildings. So I think it would be helpful if you could focus on the comments. So the comments were that I think everybody also thought the height and massing was appropriate in this context, and it was really about the brick detailing, the fenestration, and the storefront changes at the corner of Malcolm X Boulevard.
Okay, so we got that.
And the color of the brick, okay.
So I'll scroll through so this is our previous view, the previous presentation view of Malcolm X Boulevard. The proposed changes. Sorry? Oh, yes, please. So this page shows the diagrammatic view of the changes made. On the left side is a previously proposed elevation. In the middle, we can see that the brick facade was turned around the corner. The color of the stucco was changed. The brick color of the building also was changed. So the brick material was changed, and it's in our opinion, more contextual, earth tone and brownish warm tone of the masonry. So the view and the this is the full rendering view from the side. This is a frontal view of the previously proposed project on Malcolm X side. There was a change in on the first floor windows, which have been modified to create more storefront look that is more appropriate to this commercial street. Also, the top floor windows on the top floor, they have been visually combined with metal element in between them. The balconies on the corner have been eliminated. And as you can see, new precast elements contrasting newly selected brick have been introduced in the facade to create more visual interest in detail here. So this is a full view from Malcolm X Street side. This is previously shown view from pedestrian point of view on Bainbridge, straight towards Malcolm X.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you one more time? Unfortunately, we are having technical difficulties that we haven't been able to sort of seamlessly address. So we're just going to have to take 1 minute to reboot and restart. And I'm sorry for all of the interruptions. I know it's probably throwing off your presentation, so we appreciate the patience.
This was needed.
So the changes proposed on this, can you hear me now?
seems to be the connection between the microphones and the Zoom. And so the Zoom is only picking up the room audio. And until we can figure that out, we'll just ask everybody to speak very loudly. Keep your mic on in case it does work, but otherwise just project. And we can hear you very well in this room. In the ante-room, the sound is working perfectly and clear, but it seems to not be going through Zoom. So just speak as loud as you can, and commissioners.
All right, just a couple of additional notes on this view. I forgot to mention that the combination of the windows into a larger opening in the top floor is a visual gesture towards the recessed mansard floor right around the corner. And it also creates a visual connection between the trace of the typical volume on Bainbridge Street that is recognizable in this facade. So the building looks more consistent and connected. So this corner volume resembles the contextual modules that we proposed on Bainbridge side as well. So back to the view, to the pedestrian view from the Bainbridge Street towards Malcolm X side. This is our previous proposal, where you can see the facade was mainly composed out of brick details and project and standing brick elements, but it was all in one material. Also, the base was originally suggested to be cladded with darker stone. So the changes we propose are the following. First of all, the projection of the balconies have been reduced. So the balconies are projection significantly less, but they still project a bit to create a light and shadow play, and also to allow for required percentage of opening of the balcony to zoning resolution. The first floor material, which used to be darker stone, have been substituted to the same newly selected brick, but with a different texture. So the new brick elements, the new brick is proposed to be used in two different ways, as a flat finish and split face finish, which is a more rough finish. We have actually physical samples of the materials. We can show this to you. So the split face finish is proposed to be used on the first floor and also on the window lintels. So this is a split face finish. That one's there. Flat finish of the brick, which is the majority of the building. We're also introducing contrasting precast limestone elements into facade that create additional detail. And introduction of precast limestone elements under the windows as a seal have been introduced as well. So this is a full view from the street side. We believe this view actually demonstrates well the contextual connection between the color and the language of limestone brick to the surrounding buildings in the neighborhood. For example, the building right across the street, which can be seen on Malcolm X here, also uses brick and limestone elements in a different way. We also have similar language around the neighborhood, and also the material is very similar to our building adjacent to us on Bainbridge Street side.
Separate fields, there will be single place. Right.
But I think we can show this other version of the brick because they come with slight variations.
Okay. So it's the same way that we can sample. And the customer proposed.
We have multiple layers of the pretest. Okay, so this is the previously proposed view of the front building from the main street side. This facade, there are a few changes have been implemented. First of all, the color of the recessed mansard roof stains in zinc cladded material. The color of this material have been changed to the light blue. Can you show the color samples, please? The color of the stuff on the side also is complementary to the brick color. And we also turn brick around the corner next to the side adjacent small building next to us. So there is additional 7 feet of brick turnaround. We can also say, so this is the proposed view. We intentionally eliminated trees here in relation to the original, not to be able to see volumes clearly, and the changes have been cleared out. Just to quickly remind you, the whole idea of this facade, which is 155 feet long, was to subdivide this into contextual building modules, which have direct relation to the brownstone proportions. We have recessed gaps between those volumes, which make the facade very three-dimensional, not flat. And by doing so, this three-dimensional return and volumetric appeal of the facade actually emphasizes the massivity of the masonry values, which are very traditional in historic architecture. Usually, brick flat facade doesn't create this feel of massive and traditional made brickwork. So going into the details a little bit closer, this is our previously proposed version. Sure.
Thanks.
So the proposed changes on the corner volume are on the vintage side of the corner volume, we usually combine to the top of the windows, also the recessed metal elements. The windows above the windows made with the same brick, but with this brick face finish, which is a rougher finish. Introduction of precast horizontal elements and window sills in cornices and throughout the facade creates a contrast and detail. We also projected those horizontal precasts a few inches more in order to create shadows. Now, in this view, I would like to mention that all window openings within masonry volumes, they are working within
the same invisible grid. Therefore, although they're different in shape and size, they can clearly be refer to each other and they resemble each other in terms of proportion and dimensions and locations. So all those different geometrical shapes of openings, although the additional point of interest in the facade, they work within the same within the same scheme and follow the same rule of the game. Now on this slide, we can see on the top the base elevation and the updated one. Again, this elevation demonstrates the general idea of modular composition and breaking very long facade, 155 feet length into segments, and also the visual connection between the corner volume height to the building across the street on mountains. I'd like to remind everyone that we, by zoning, have built much taller building, but this was a conscious decision to relate to the environment and to do as much as possible not to overwhelm this corner. This is the elevation on Mountain Street side. The main difference is the change in color of the stucco, combination of the top windows, commercial frontage, a stone front of the and also the angle of the demonstrates the visibility of the bulkhead. Those are the rear positions. The main change is the color of the local stucco and a couple of samples of the light gray stucco for the bulkhead and earth tone color of the stucco that relates to the masonry portion of the project. This is a section on Bainbridge Street, which shows that the so-called mansard or recessed story visually lowers the volumes on the Bainbridge Street side and makes it more contextual by the scale of the building. So those are all the slides that show contextual relationship of building elements to the buildings and then the building elements. Yeah, yes. We added a couple of more slides that show different variations of windows and painted windows and combined windows. Examples from the neighborhood which we didn't show previously. And this slide is a collage that shows how our building may usually relate to what already exists in the neighborhood. These slides just outline the selected materials and brick textures. We also include the floor plans that give you a clear idea of how the windows are arranged in layouts. And the final slide, the site plan shows minor changes in layout of mechanical equipment that generally have been realigned to the very double stacked HVAC units, so they become completely visible. I'd like to summarize it with a quick summary that I'd like to read for you. I wrote it last night. Because I'm a bit risky, so I'm just had to. So I'd like to say that we see this project as an architectural narrative, which is a story about a building designed around the time in 2024 that has direct contextual relationship with the historic neighborhood that is eclectic in its character. Our project relates to surrounding historic environment by default architectural means, by contextual scale and proportions of the massing composition, by appropriate height and setbacks, by choice of traditional masonry materials and textures that will age well and will stand the test of time, by introduction of contrasting facade accents and details, brick and limestone or precast, that are following the traditional design language typical for this neighborhood. And although the details do not replicate elements, they do play the same role and fulfill the same decorative function by enriching the experience of a building elevation with different textures, colors, and with the play of light and shadow. By transparent visual references that clearly relate to traditional proportions of building characters and building blocks typical for the surrounding historic district. And finally, by creation of a three-dimensional facade that has depth, that emphasizes the traditional solid feel of the real masonry built structures. This is not a generic project that is foreign to the surrounding environment. Every design decision here has been formed by the practical specific, by the particular specific circumstances of this very site. And we believe that this building will successfully blend into its context while preserving its own unique character. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have any questions? I do. Yes, Commissioner Luttrell. Could you please, I just have a few questions about the materials. So the new metal banding that you've inserted actually place tiles on the top floor. And it's also exactly the same as what is, separates the windows at the corner. Is that material represented here?
I'd like to clarify your question. Doesn't relate this here?
So you took out the brick column and you put in a metal band, and then that visually speaks to the banding at the horizontal banding at the corner. So is that material here? Okay.
Those are the materials listed here. This is the material of the windows and metal everywhere, which is dark.
Right.
And this is the material of the reset outside, which is white.
I see. Okay, I understand that. Now, then the blue lighter brick here. Just in the very front, it's almost yellow. Yeah. That's precast, and that's for the sprinklers. Okay, and it's also for the sills?
For the sills, it's the same. All these horizontal bands, precast sills on the way.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, it's slightly hard.
Can you just list up the brick sample there that in fact is the upper warmer color? So you can see two versions.
It's the same specification, but they never come exactly the same batch. Because really is very anything that it's something to the public fire. I eventually presented one of them because it's something inside science, what kind of exactly I wanted to get. And they all come from also from the governments. But so it's very the same way. It's one. It's also the same way. Right. Say though, that this line on the justice.
Right.
You have to see it bigger than the line outside. As they in the field.
So what are you proposing?
All right, and just for the record.
The windows to be rather than jump. Slide with their neck on the main surface of the sauce. And the third floor, the third floor on Main Street side to be really around.
Okay, 1 minute. I just want to note for the viewers who are looking at this remotely that was Commissioner Chu who was asking that question. I want to go to Commissioner Ginsburg because we're waiting, and then I'll come back to Commissioner Levy. Commissioner Ginsburg?
Yes, so I have a question that may affect what you're showing, although not directly related. The balconies are less than 5 feet deep. I don't think that meets handicap code. Have you found a way to make it accessibility code? Or are you going to have an issue with the building department when you show this, that they're going to say that it has to be smaller and not usable, just so you have the 5 foot clear dimension?
We believe that the 4 feet balconies will work. Depends on the type of opening of the doors, the width of the doors. But the idea is to make those balconies handicap accessible, yes. Okay.
All right, Commissioner Levy.
I'm going to ask you to go back to the holding of the where the song again. And would you please hold that pretty well together for the and I just want to get a better story. Okay.
I'm sure the big example because there should be a slightly there. We're fine better than the sample of the red side and the first sample provided. So it's evaluation.
Right. You place some other samples next to you.
Oh, there's not really.
Oh, that's
We haven't seen the sample in the use of the standard system to prepare the use. So the ecosystem will be about is actually a mountain layer. So they have what is that? Visual variable. And they not really also color. As I mentioned, the color is selected, they have a color sample. That is fine. And it may not have different textures also. So already find one, the method is one.
You're recommending that one.
I recommend texture which is not very fine, not very thin, which has more. So we will not look very, very.
And the color you're recommending is that
The color really blended is scale, which is the color. This slide is the judge. This is the color.
And does that, you hold that up next to that small little brick that we were recommending? Where it got lost somewhere.
And we also have multiple, we have to get that on the site. So with the actual, that is a way to receive of the crop, but we have more pumps. The actual way to receive and that we decided.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Sure. That's
Actually, it didn't sound like the senior presentation. Commissioner Jefferson?
I just have one comment on the question. If you could go to slide, page 25. It has to be the set you cannot because of the column on the top floor.
I'm sorry.
Have you seen where you have the system, that's at the column that's there. Virtually edition, page 25. Yeah, the third edition. I think you did a terrific job on this project, except for those patterns, because in a way, but as an architect, I understand why they're there. That's not. Right. You're the columns.
So I'm going one slide back, maybe just see it, this one, right?
Yeah, there's a column back there, I suppose. And you cut it up by another column. To get the windows to work, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Usually on this side, you cannot really see that this is not just a flat surface. It has a recessed portion on the side. So it's not a flat simple surface. It has some.
I understand. I understand.
And our idea was that we want this element to be part of the windows.
I understand. I understand. I'm just. It's just.
I think this makes the problem more lighter, and also it refers to this.
Right, so I did a perfect job. Technically, it's perfect. There's just this one issue that, that's the song that I think was fine, it's fine.
All right, any other questions? Okay, so I think we will move to our discussion, and as I said before, the last time we saw this application, all of the commissioners present supported with demolition of the existing buildings and also supported the height and massing and scale, general scale of the building. But we did ask the applicant to restudy the color and material palette to be a warmer tone. We asked that the brick detailing be enhanced, that the fenestration be varied, and that the ground floor at the corner of Malcolm X Boulevard should have the appearance of more like a storefront, be opened up to be more like a storefront. And so as they're presented, they have changed the brick to a warmer tone, and they have wrapped it around the side facades, which was a suggestion by a couple of commissioners. On those corners, and have also chosen a warmer tone of stucco for the side facades. They've also added cast stone and string courses and a different brick for the window lintels and enhance the detailing. We had some discussion about the balconies with varying comments about recessing, eliminating, or keeping them projecting. And so they have eliminated the balconies at the corner and put back other balconies. They've responded to our comments about varying the fenestration by this approach of the top floor to vary it from the lower floors with the metal panel. And they've opened up the ground floor window openings on Malcolm X Boulevard to be more evocative of the storefront. So those are the summary of the changes, and we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Chu, would you like to start this one?
Sure. I think I'd just like to commend the applicant on listening to the comments that the commission made with your last session and making various revisions. I think that in general, I am in support of everything as was said, and we appreciate the effort to make the missing and height smaller than the FI zoning allowed you to do. That is definitely appreciated, and I feel like it fits in with the larger scale buildings in this neighborhood because of that. Now specifically regarding the revisions made, I can go through them. I think that the rendering represent a change in the brick tone to a warmer color, and overall, I think that it does work on the streetscape. I was looking at a lot of the other views of the corner buildings, and I believe it's the southeast corner has a larger building that is a color that's warmer. I think that this mass will also be more complementary too. I do, however, feel that, and this is a general comment, because you did show varying textures and colors that do appear different here in this light, that staff will work with you on matching this on site when we get the final bricks, because it is generally a massing approach. The brick colors that you're showing aren't that different from each other that I can tell. And I think the concern I have is that you retain the sense of the holistic sense to the tone. And that difference is too minimal and not. Right, the solar is it's just slightly different than the one brick behind it, and they feel like it's a mistake. Because of actually a lot of different material options here on this, even though you're better, makes it look more simple. So products allow the horizontal bands that I think your precast achieves. The differentiations between the rest of them, I think we have to just be real careful about. The original approach was more monolithic, it was brighter and more contrasty, which you've toned down, which I think helps the overall impact. But I don't want you to get too muddy with these slight differences in the texture or color because they start to get muddy. The horizontal being a lighter color works well. If you decide that you want the windows to be different, they need to be really feel different right now. I can't tell. Then just concentrate on the raw versus crude tones because that's what I'm getting confused on with the actual samples. But the renderings are clear in that sense. You get two different colors of brick on one couple and the lighter one that's the ground floor on one facade, and the differentiation should be clear. The moves that you've made, I think in general, are positive. I think that the return of the brick on the two facades is a great improvement. Appreciate that. It really makes those facades feel masonry and not just two-dimensional on building facades. Increase in amount of storefront at the ground floor, I think, help on the corner. The upper portion of the building, I think that your wider standing seeing better. If the sample looks better than the renderings are really wide, and I'm really worried that it's gonna compete. So I do think that it's a lighter color than you had, which was your darker, but don't get it too light. The comment that was made by Commissioner Jefferson about that one piece, and I'd like to hear another commissioner's opinion about it. Defense on it, I do think it feels almost like in the same team. The fact that you did keep the horizontal running through the vertical piers, I think is a gesture already. I would entertain you replacing it back with the brick as you had it before and just letting the ground floor be more storefront. I would definitely consider that as an option. Without any projections, I think that Commissioner Ginsburg's comment about the ADAccessibility may affect your design here. So that's something that really does need to get checked because that will affect the gap projection or recess. I do think that the stone to the brick of the ground floor is better, but yet it helps simplify and not make a lot of unnecessary differences in materiality. And I think that's it. Overall,
Commissioner Master. Okay. Yes, I also want to applaud the applicant for being very responsive to the comments. I think this is a huge improvement. I echo a lot of what Commissioner Chu said. I think the warm tone brick is very effective. The corner return for the bricks around is a huge improvement. The contrasting lintels on the window are good. And the ground floor that you have the increased windows makes it commercial storefront and gives you a contrast of the ground floor versus the rest of the building. For the top floor, the varied fenestration with the metal, I guess inlay, I'm actually okay with that, but I'm curious to hear what the other commissioners have to say. Overall, I think you did a great job, and I find it appropriate. Thank you, Commissioner Jefferson.
I think it's a really well decided building. So I know to this person on back. And very convincing two issues I have is the changing of the shadows of in this building and that building that used to be a dark brown is now gray.
And on the other hand, why change it? Why just the vertical slots are dark down? And there's a kind of a contrast there that I thought was appealing. And seems to be able to, artistic interpretations.
Commissioner Chu also preferred it down there. Yeah,
I think it was a good job.
Commissioner Hall.
Yeah, I agree with my fellow commissioners on almost all of the comments they made. The metal color, I just was wondering whether it would tie the building together better if it was one color of metal. Maybe something in between the two. For me, the darker color of the balconies is too dark and the windows, and maybe that's why they're reacting to that panel being on there because it's so dark. Perhaps if it were a little bit lighter. But again, curious to what other commissioners have to say. I could also see going back to brick on that detail. I understand the concept for why it was changed to metal, but I'm not sure how successful that was. Otherwise, I think it's very well designed and appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, I think in general, the applicant has been responsive to our comments before. And I think that the change in color to the facade and the string courses, the additional detailing, I think also making the top level a lighter color, regardless of whether it's the exact color, but I think that that's definitely an improvement. And I think the treatment of the balconies is fine. The storefront windows is improved the look of the building and made it more appropriate for the district. So I think in general, I can definitely approve this. And as far as this, people are making a lot of individual comments. So let's see where we end up on that. But I think in general, the approach of the color palette was successful, and of the use of the brick and the using rough brick and smoke brick. Also, I think all of those things are positive, and I, can vote for it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Goldblum.
Thank you. I agree with what Stephen said. I thought his analysis was very careful and fair. And I also agree with subsequent comments about modulating the colors. I think it's an appropriate design. I think that a lot of the comments that we did make last time kind of did not get responded to. I'm kind of disappointed by that a little bit. I think that the added research was useful to me, seeing the examples of elements in the neighborhood or in the district that are being shared. I worry a little bit that the ground floor going to brick, while simpler and a better solution, will feel a little bit undercooked at the ground level where you're willing to engage with it, considering the other buildings in the neighborhood that all had a lot more detail and interest going on, whether it's rusticated bases or fences or stoops or modulation of the brick in the school. And the districts at the street level has a lot of activity, and I think that the reversion to brick, while not the wrong move, might or other examination. I also think that the precast colors, we're all kind of talking about color here, and so the mustardy color didn't look right to me given the samples, but I'm sure staff will look that up.
So some articulation at the ground floor. Commissioner Ginsburg.
So I agree with the other commissioners' comments. Excuse me. I think it's approvable. I might look at the two suggestions of Commissioner Hartford Smith of one color of metal and possibly going back to the brick between the windows. But I can approve it as is.
Commissioner Chen.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of people and a lot of commissioners getting things and responsible. So there's not touch on this obviously
the corner return on the other side, when the brick return, I think the difficulty for us always is about the truth in rendering and what the actual material. So I think the plan should be that they really should work with the staff closely, because on rendering, when the brick corner returns looks the same, but the levels and the details, once the actual color, and that, I think that's what the commissioners are questioning about, is the contrast. And that really will determine the look and the feel. And I also agree that the panel, that rooftop panel, need to be carefully looked at.
Okay. That top floor, do you have a preference of brick or the metal at the top floor?
That I have no preference, but I think that, right now, as it stands, that thing, might be too light. The commissioner chose absolutely right.
It's actually the dark one for that panel, the penthouse is the set.
Oh, I see, okay. Yeah, I mean, also, my concern is also the side when it returns, what it looks like. Yeah, that was a great question, whether, because if you go for the masonry, this thing looks very different.
Okay. Commissioner Lefty?
I'm just going to, I actually think everybody's made great comments, but I am going to repeat a couple. Or whatever. I do also want to say at the beginning, this started out as being a project with very good promise, and I think it's gotten better. It does need some working with staff on a few items. I especially do appreciate how, from a volumetric standpoint, this project fits into the landscape around it. It's going to be here for a long time, and it needs to have not only make a positive impact on the landscape, but it needs to not be overwhelming. And I think your initial thoughts behind how to approach this project was the right approach. And these changes have made the project stronger. So I do want to say that I actually appreciate the changes in the brick, both at the top and at the base, and also using different brick or banding for the string course and the lintels. And I hope the balconies do meet ADA, but I'm okay with whatever changes you have to make. I didn't have a problem with the original balconies, only because I feel like if you're going to put a balcony on a building, it might as well get some light and be usable. So I think the storefront windows, the window at the base works well. I didn't say, by the way, that the way the brick makes the turn, it actually makes the facade much stronger. It was a great recommendation to begin with. I do agree with Anne that the metal actually on the facade should all be the same color, whether it's the balconies or the metal horizontal and vertical metal banding. I'm kind of up in the air about the banding up on the top floor. I appreciate that you felt that it kind of made that floor, that level a little lighter, but it also, from a visual standpoint, added some interest. So I could go with it, but I would also encourage you to think about it a little more and work with staff on it, because you don't really want to make it look like, as other commissioners have said, a mistake, like there should have been something else there. And just to cover it, deal with it quickly, you stuck the metal in. I do feel that the penthouse should be a little lighter, so I prefer the light color.
And again, I think you should work with staff on the coloration and the texture, including the texture of the color and texture of the stucco. But otherwise, it's really a strong project. Okay, great. Thank you. So I think we appreciate all of the effort that you've taken and the changes that you've made. And I think we can make a motion to approve it today with some considerations. And that is that you work closely with the staff to review and approve the colors, samples of all materials in the field in the natural light. And with an eye to also modulating that color, the metal. So thinking about it as possibly one color between the two, or somehow balancing those. And also looking closely at the texture of the brick at the window lintels and at the ground floor to make sure that there is enough differentiation and articulation in those areas. And I think that those are the recommendations. So it's really looking at the stucco, the brick, and the metal and the precast colors all together in the field with the staff, and then just really looking at the textures that you're thinking about for those lintels and at the ground floor. So Commissioner Chu, would you make a motion to approve it with the condition that they work closely with the staff on final review and approval of all the material samples in the field?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. In the case of LPC 23-11-767 340 Malcolm X Boulevard, also known as 340 to 344 Malcolm X Boulevard and 188 to 202 Bainbridge Street, Bedford-Stuyvesant, expanded Stuyvesant Heights Historic District. A commercial building designed by Tobias Goldstone and built in 1921, and a store and flats built designed by Morris Rothstein and built in 1929, both reclaimed and modified post 1980 as a church in an empty lot. Application is to demolish the existing buildings and construct a new building. We note that the commercial building at 340 Malcolm X Boulevard, aka 196-202 Bainbridge Street, and the store and flats building at 344 Malcolm X Boulevard were both reclaimed and modified post 1980 and are non-contributing buildings to the Bedford-Stuyvesant expanded Stuyvesant Heights Historic District. We further note that the location of the proposed new building includes an empty lot. Finally, staff notes, we note that the surrounding blocks feature a mix of low row houses and apartment buildings of 5 stories or less, and an institutional building. I recommend approval that the existing 2 buildings at 340, 344 Malcolm X Boulevard have been unsympathetically altered over time and contain no significant architectural features. Therefore, demolishing these buildings will not diminish the special architectural or historic character of the historic district. That the scale and massing of the proposed apartment building will be similar to and compatible with the historic multi-family buildings on adjacent blocks, and will not overwhelm or detract from these buildings or other buildings in the streetscape. That the proposed building will be in keeping with the street wall heights of historic apartment buildings found across the street on Malcolm X Boulevard and to the east on Bainbridge Street. That the scale of the proposed new building is broken down by extreme facade volumes on Bainbridge Street, which creates a rhythmic pattern that relates to other row houses and multi-family buildings in the streetscape while stepping down in scale from the full height massing of the building set behind these volumes. That the setbacks at the 5th floor and the westernmost facade at Bainbridge Street further reduce the massing and help the new building transition to the adjacent similar row houses by aligning this portion of the building with them in plane. That the fenestration pattern featuring punched openings with deeply inset windows grouped into regularized bays in the masonry portion of the building, all with fixed and muffler panels, and some with double vertical mullions will recall the fenestration found at other large residential buildings in the historic district. That the triple height window assembly at the corner of the building featuring profiled metal spandrel panels in between floors will add architectural interest to the midsection of the building, and where we're called bay features sometimes found at historic corner buildings. That the balconies within the recesses of the facade featuring simple metal railings with dark finish will relate to fire escapes and ironwork found in other buildings in the historic district. That the proposed material palette featuring dark buff colored patterned brickwork, sandstone, water tables, light gray metal standing seam roofing, profile metal panels, and charcoal colored metal windows and doors will be supportive of a simple contemporary design and will harmonize with historic masonry buildings and the streetscape. And as Commissioner Carol mentioned, the applicant will work with staff closely on the final brick selection, color, pattern, texture, as well as the metals. That the areaway fronting the building along Bainbridge Street featuring planters, low railings, ramps, and recessed residential garage entrances will relate to areaways found at other multifamily buildings that transition from the public sidewalk to the building. That the stair and elevator bulkheads, railing, and HVAC units will be set back from the street facades and will not be visible from directly across the street, and the partial visibility of some of these elements from other weak angles will be minimized by simple massing and finishes that help them to recede from view. That the visible portions of the lot line facades on Malcolm X Boulevard and Bainbridge Street featuring light finished cladding are simple in design with minimal window openings and will reflect the typical conditions of taller residential buildings across the district. That the excavation will be designed and built in compliance with the Department of Building regulations under the supervision of licensed engineer to protect the adjacent buildings, and that the proposed building will enhance the special architectural and historic character of the historic district.
Thank you. Commissioner Master, would you second that motion? Second. And Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin. Aye. Commissioner Chen. Aye. Commissioner Chu.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg. Aye. Commissioner Goldblum. Aye. Commissioner Jefferson. Aye. Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
With 10 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
All right, so that's approved. Please continue to work with the staff on all those final material and color selections. And while it is approved with the metal panel at the top floor, you've heard many commissioners also like brick. So if you continue to think about that, that would also be perfectly fine if you would like to continue to explore that. Okay.
All right, we'll now move to the next item, public meeting item number 2, LPC 22-00874, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 528, lot 82, 51 Downing Street, aka 49 to 51 Downing Street, in Greenwich Village Historic District Extension 2. This is a Romanesque revival style stable and residence designed by Warner and Windrock and built in 1896 with major alterations completed in 1986 and 1988. The application is to construct a rooftop addition, replace ground floor infill, replace windows, and alter the rear facade. This was last presented at the public hearing of September 12th, 2023. No action was taken at that time. The applicant will present revisions to the proposal after we open the proceedings.
So let's do that now. Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to open the proceedings? So moved. And Commissioner Goldblum, would you second that motion? Second. All in favor, say aye. 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 Any opposed? All right, you may begin. As you just described, we're here for training, so really appreciate the opportunity to come back and give the responses to your comments. How's the audio? Okay. Okay. So what I did was I pulled some of the larger historical context for the project and put it in the back, since many of you saw this before. So I'll focus and go point by point how we responded to the commission's comments. 2 items of note, though: we are not proposing the removal of any original historic material, nor can you see the addition from Downing Street over the historic facade. So the comments were addressing those related to building volume and scale, materiality and articulation, street visibility, from the rear facade, the front facade window design, and the front facade residential and garage door design. So this is first a comparison of what we previously presented to what we'll be presenting today. I'll go through a summary of how we are proposing the massing and scale reduction, and that's because of a series of different steps in terms of reducing both the bulkheads, the new roof assembly, the ceiling heights, and the floor assembly to obtain just about 5.5 feet of overall reduction. This is the section comparatively showing the cyan dash line. What we did was the fourth floor, let me see if I can use my cursor. So the fourth floor assembly was reduced. We did have to create a separation, and that was reduced to the code line. Then secondly, we reduced the ceiling heights on what's effectively the first mezzanine floor. We reduced the overall roof assembly, and a major component that changed was originally we had privacy screen louvers that also defined the guardrail height, so that was higher than the rooftop. That was removed, so the overall reduction of visible massing is 5 feet 5 inches. We'll go through each of these individually. So there's all good, thanks. So the first was on the left is the FDNY required egress stair. That was brought down to a code clear minimum of 7'6" interior, and the overall roof assembly reduced. So we get a reduction on that volume. That, as you'll see from the gap view, that's the more visible bulkhead. On the right, mechanical bulkhead was also reduced. The privacy screen, originally we had louvers. The depth of those louvers created kind of a visual heaviness and darkness to the facade. They also didn't articulate kind of a panelization because they went side to side. So what we did is we introduced, not per the commission's recommendations, a panelization that went with the rhythm of what you'll see as kind of the new studio windows, but also introduced a screening. When you had asked for the guardrail, to be reduced and the louvers eliminated, we introduced a thin metal frame with the mesh. The client liked so much the lightness of that proposal that he asked that the louvers actually be changed as well to more of a screen material. What this does is it likes that during certain times of day, you'll also get the studio window scaling through. So the point of our presentation today is to address lightness at all issues, lightness of the physical massing, lightness of the materiality in terms of color, and lightness on the articulation to break down the scale. Again, kind of taking that studio window, so on the fourth floor, that studio window where we don't have the privacy mesh is fully visible. And per the commission's comments, previously we had this as a perforated screen where there was no window articulation. It was asked that we look at the articulation of the lower existing floors and match that to create perforations. And that also allows some visibility to those new studio windows. So in the comparison and then summary of materiality, previously for the bulkheads, we had a cementitious material that rendered a very solid and heavy massing for the bulkheads. So we went with a matte aluminum. The good thing about that is it offers up kind of catching the ambient light of the sky and dematerializing it without creating any reflection. The louvers, as you can see, previously went side to side, and again, their depth created somewhat of a scaleless and heavy articulation. And so removing those, pulling those, and expressing the piers more akin to the historic scale, and then having the mesh, which we can work hopefully at staff level to kind of articulate and mock up different scales of that screening. But the panelization kind of taking its cue from the studio windows below. The guardrail, which had previously been articulated by the same kind of heavy louvers, is expressed with the smaller frame and the mesh. For our renderings, you'll note we actually heavied up the guardrail just so we could see it as a datum, but it would be very, very minimally visible. Let's see. Oh, and then there's another thing to note is that the cornice line, it is stepped back kind of to give further articulation to the top of the primary facade. So we have many views from the previous presentation, but we're focusing obviously on the one that was most exposed, which is kind of this upward gap view across from Carmen and 7th Avenue. The left was the previous proposal. The gable roof articulated in magenta dash. By comparison to the right, the cornice line is coincident with where the gable of the current addition is now. The white dashed was the previous massing of bulkheads and louver screen. And we believe that all of this kind of offers up a greater articulation more akin to the adjacent context and less looming. Another add was, if you see in the center, that is the context for what is actually on that street and would be masking the majority of the building from the back. This is the view of the same flat view from 7th Avenue with the changes illustrated. And for the front facade, again, we're not removing any historic material, but what we did do is listen to 3 comments from the commission. One was that there was a disparity between what we were proposing for the 4th floor and the 3rd floor. So our client owns the 4th floor. We spoke to the board at large and they agreed that they would change their 3rd floor to be in what the commission was proposing. So instead of the simulated divided lights of the previous casements, we're doing a true double hung window that provides the kind of thickened intermediate Latin and a true 2/2. As well, the wood, which was previously a stain, is now painted. We're proposing kind of an earthy gray now, but would welcome kind of the commission and the staff level guidance in that exact paint. And we're proposing the same for all of the windows on the 3rd and 4th floor.
And just to note, the windows at the 3rd and 4th floor now are eligible for a staff level approval. So they are not going to be part of our discussion. Okay.
And the profile showing the true double hung. And then on the lower level, where we previously had, I would say, flat panel articulation with the walnut color, we looked more closely at the historic tax photo, trying to glean what we could from this very grainy image. But what came from that, what came from other precedent, was the vertical paneling that broke down the scale of the flat panels. It also gave us the brick reveal that helped us identify some framing datums. And then too, we were able to kind of pull from that a datum for the transom that was akin to the original one pedestrian door within the photo. And just looking at other precedent, many of the past proposals were pre-designation, so we weren't really looking at those so much as the historic tax photo to guide our decisions. And this is kind of showing a comparison between what is existing, non-original, and what we're proposing on the right. Garage door. And kind of a summary of everything related to the front facade proposals. And the front and back. So I know I went through very quickly in the interest of time.
And thank you very much. And we appreciate that being succinct. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Yes, Commissioner Chu.
I'm just trying to understand the plan of the louver or the solar shading mesh on the back facade. Is that facade flat? Is that central portion, is the mesh flush with the stucco to this adjacent, or is it forward of it?
Right now, we have it with the thickness of the frame sticks out beyond. What we wanted to do is we wanted to break down the scale in two ways. Because last time the commission said that there really wasn't not enough differentiation between the fact that this is really 2 stories and kind of the overall width. So the glazing is slightly set back from the side piers.
By how much?
Can get back to you on that. I want to say a couple inches.
Oh, very little.
Very little, very little. I mean, all of this is open to conversation. What we're trying to do is figure out the balance between it not being too fussy or too many things going on. We're actually just trying to kind of quiet the whole facade. But what we are trying to do is, and then the screening is, I would say, equally set forward. So maybe it's about 6 or 7 inches in front of the glazing, which is what casts the shadow line. So, you know, it was important that from the reading, you understand that the upper level and the lower level are 2 different stories. Do you have a concern about?
I'm just not understanding it volumetrically because there wasn't any plan or detail of that condition. Also, I was trying to understand if so you've got only a couple of inches between is there glass behind? There's glass obviously behind the mesh.
Yes.
Is that glass so close to the mesh that you can't maintain or wash?
No. When I was talking about a few inches, that's from the behind the framing to the face of the glass. Sorry, that's the clear dimension.
Okay.
I can try to pull that out.
Okay. So I'm imagining that this solar mesh screen is attached to this volume because it's proud of it.
Correct.
Projected.
Correct. So what we would have to do is we've not gone into all the detailing because we want to get to a certain level, but we would be attaching kind of an intermediate connection between the different mullions to hold that screen proud of the glazing.
Okay. And then it stops and it's hanging up above the lower portion.
Correct. And then you've got the cornice, which steps twice over behind. And then the mesh guardrail is set back beyond that. We want it to both visually and physically be completely separate from the facade itself.
And a question for Sarah is, are we reviewing the rear facade or is that a previously?
Some of the commissioners last time asked that there be windows and not the screen at the top floor.
But what about the bottom?
The bottom portion, I think, Corey, I have to ask you.
Yeah, do you want to give the recap on that? I think it is not.
Yeah, we're only looking at the top floor. The lower floors are all the existing condition currently.
Thank you.
And with other owners.
Right. Okay, Commissioner Ginsburg.
Do you have a sample of the mesh?
I do not. We tried to obtain like 3 different versions. We were working with Leanne to do that. We haven't, but we can provide that. Another thing that we wanted to do was do physical mock-ups in situ to kind of understand the scale of those, because we understand that the density of that will play a large part both in how much it dematerializes and how much, because what we do is we want to see the articulation of the panelization and of the framing beyond. And we know if it's too dense, then it'll kind of create more of a homogeneous reflective surface.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Sorry, just and I'm just trying to understand your intent. Is your intent that the framing that supports the mesh be articulated and driven through the mesh so we get a verticality, or is it hidden behind that?
No, it's important that it actually is behind that panelization, right? Because it's really picking up and extruding the studio windows behind.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? All right, not seeing any other questions. I think we'll move to our discussion. Thank you. Okay, so last time we saw this, not everybody was here. And so I'm going to sort of start with those who were here. But when we saw this application, I think the commissioners were okay with sort of a modern approach to this rooftop addition. But we did, the commissioners present felt that, and the modern approach in modern materials, but the commissioners felt that as it was articulated, it was sort of scaleless. And so the comments generally were that the height of the addition should be reduced and that the detailing of that rear be more articulated to give it some scale. And there were some comments about the windows, which are no longer before us. And then there were some comments about the doors and resetting the doors to better evoke the historic use. And so we'll begin our comments. Commissioner Lutfi, you specifically talked about reducing the massing of the addition and resetting the doors, refining the doors.
So from a massing standpoint, in terms of, we did make these reductions and I think they make a difference. So whatever, there's limited visibility and I think that visibility just kind of blends within the existing top of building terrain in this particular neighborhood. So I think that works. I do want to say that the change in the windows, even though we're not voting on it, it really enhances the facade. And the changes at the bottom, I think, work better as well. A little more detail, the change in the color. I guess I feel like the thing that still, which you have said yourself, is unresolved is the screen. And I appreciate what you want to accomplish, but I think it needs, just by virtue of all of the questions, it's not resolved. It's not clear. I think you are going to need to work very closely with staff on this to make sure that it makes sense. Otherwise, I think it's fine.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chen, you were here and also had similar comments.
Yeah, I share some of the comments as well. I think everything was can you get the suggestion that I think is greatly improved. She was asking about the amount, and I think I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if they design it. I was saying that maybe the addition of the truck, like other things, but I think that we're going to the applicant work with staff and see how it can be improved.
Okay. Right, and Commissioner Ginsburg, you also felt it should be lowered. And you thought the sort of modern materials were okay, but did ask that those windows at the top floor be square.
I think it's a definite improvement. It will address to our concerns. And as I think Commissioner Lefty mentioned, to make work closely with staff on the material, the screen material, to get that right. But I think it's important.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Master, you were here last time also, and I think we're supportive of it generally. Is there any additional thoughts you have?
Yes, I think the applicant has done a great job in addressing our comments. And I just also have to say that reviewing the presentation over the weekend, you did a great job in listing out exactly what our comments were and how you addressed it. And so from reading it through, you did an exceptional job in terms of highlighting what was before and then what you had done to change. I just wanted to highlight that. I think that, you reduced the height, I think, by more than 5 feet, which is fantastic. And you changed the doors with more articulation. And I think that's a huge improvement to what we had before. I think the only thing outstanding, which I agree with Commissioner Lutfi, is the mesh screen. We just don't have enough information about how it relates. And I think if you work closely with staff, I think that this would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Jefferson, you were also here last time and had similar comments.
Yeah, I think to construct a roof addition appropriate, replace ground floor appropriate, all of it is appropriate. The only issue that on the screen, you need to add another layer.
with a lot of vertical there, built it up and they do another job.
Okay. All right, and Commissioner Chu, I don't think you were here last time, but yeah, do you have any thoughts after the presentation today?
No, I think I agree with my fellow commissioners' comments, the articulation, the sample of mesh that's included in the presentation looks most likely way too dense. And I would just say work with staff on that selection and also the color of the two vertical stucco walls that flank it, so that there, I just don't want to create a huge contrast that this becomes a big target in the center. That doesn't, the sides aren't too bright and too eye-catching.
Okay, great. And Commissioner Holford Smith?
Yeah, I wasn't the last time there, but I think the changes rather, they're really good to have broke down the scale. And again, I think just working with staff on the details and getting the right size of the mesh. But otherwise, I think it's a good application.
Okay, great. Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, I agree. The addition being reduced and the treatment, the changes in the windows and doors, both are improved it. And I think the only issue really is working with the staff on the mesh and exactly what should be there. I agree with others, commissioners.
Okay, and Commissioner Goldblum?
I wasn't here last time. Yeah, I agree with the other comments.
Okay. All right, so I think we have a consensus to approve this, but to continue to work with the staff on reviewing and approving the final samples of the mesh to ensure that the density and details are appropriate, and in conjunction with that, looking at the color of the stucco on the adjacent piers. Okay.
In the matter of docket 22-00874, 51 Downing Street, aka 49-51 Downing Street, Greenwich Village Historic District Extension 2. A Romanesque revival style stable and residence designed by Werner and Windolf and built in 1896 with major alterations completed in 1986 to 1988. The application is to construct a rooftop addition, replace ground floor infill, replace windows, and alter the facade. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Greenwich Village Historic District Extension 2. I also know that the building was extensively modified, including replacement of ground floor infill and windows and the construction of a visible rooftop addition when it was converted to residential use in the 1980s prior to the building's designation. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the removal of modern infill windows, existing rooftop additions, and the top floor of the modified rear facade will not eliminate or damage any significant architectural features, that the proposed two-story rooftop addition will be set back from the front facade and will not be visible from Downing Street, and that only the raised flue extension at the neighboring building will be visible over the primary facade and will not call undue attention to itself. That the historic district contains several examples of visible multi-story rooftop additions that vary in scale, and the rear facade of the existing rooftop addition at this building is partially visible from Carmine and Barrack Streets. Therefore, the presence of a rooftop addition with visibility over the rear facade is consistent with existing conditions at this building and conditions throughout the historic district. That the design and materiality of the proposed rooftop addition featuring light gray stucco, gray metal panels, mesh railings, and perforated brick were in keeping with a variety of materials and forms found at rooftop accretions within the historic district and will help to break down the overall massing of the addition, and the light finishes will help the addition to recede against the sky. that the ground floor infill featuring solid wood doors below glazed transoms at the pedestrian entrances and a large solid bifolding door at the central garage door will recall the scale and solid and simple utilitarian appearance and symmetry of the historic infill. That installing taller recessed garage doors with a reduced spandrel panel above will restore the original height and recall the inset of the historic garage doors. That the dark gray painted finish at the ground floor infill and new windows will help to unify the facade and will be harmonious with the paint finishes at adjacent buildings within the historic district. And that the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building and the Greenwich Village Historic District Extension 2. However, I find that the visual appearance of the metal mesh privacy screen remains unresolved. I therefore recommend that the applicant work closely with staff to on the final samples for the metal mesh privacy screen to determine, better determine what the proper density and details should be, and also work on the color and of the stucco walls.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Chu, would you second that motion?
Second.
John, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen, Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg, Commissioner Groveland, Commissioner Clifford Smith, Commissioner Jefferson, Commissioner Lutfi, Commissioner Master.
Aye.
In favor and opposed as modified, the motion passes.
Thank you. We'll move to our public hearing agenda.
Right, we'll begin with public hearing item number 1, LPC 24-04565. This is an application for an advisory report in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1111, lot 1. It's the West 85th Street Playground and the Central Park Scenic Landmark. This is a playground originally constructed in the 1930s and pathways within an English Romantic style public park designed in 1857, considered by President Olmsted and Calvert Fox. The application is to modify the playground footprint and pathways and replace fencing.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Diane Jackler. I'm the Vice President of Program Management at the Central Park Conservancy. We're here today to discuss the reconstruction of the West 85th Street Playground on the west side of Central Park. I'll quickly go through the project location, goals, and history of the site, and then I'll hand it over to my colleague, Nick Coster, who's our Vice President for Design. I just wanted to note we're also joined by Senator Huber, who is our Senior Vice President for capital projects at the Conservancy, as well as Lynn Adamantio, who are some of our consultants and a former long-term Conservancy employee. As the name suggests, the West 85th Street Playground is located on the west side of Central Park, just south of the West 86th Street Transverse. The playground is actually one of the 21 playgrounds built primarily in the 1920s and 30s that ring the park. They were built primarily during the Robert Ulysses era. This is one of only 3 playgrounds that has not been reconstructed in several decades. In 2011, the Conservancy created something called the Plan for Play, which is our framework for all of the playground reconstructions that we do. This serves as our guidelines for when we do our playground reconstructions and operations for the playgrounds. I'm not going to read all the goals for this project, but just quickly wanted to go through a few. We're looking to improve the relationship between the playground and the park, enhance the quality and variety of play experiences for the play users that go to the playground, maximize user accessibility, acknowledge the prominence of this playground within the Seneca Village site, and create accessible routes from the west side and to the West 84th Street Playground just south of this playground. This is a current picture of the playground. It's actually the largest in Central Park. Over the years, a lot of the play equipment that is here has been removed for safety reasons. So there's really not much there. It doesn't offer a lot of play value for the kids who come to the site. So we're really excited about this opportunity to move forward with this project. As we started the process of redesigning, we were taking a lot of our cues from the topography and circulation, vegetation, and archaeology that are so important to both the history and future of this part of the park. There are a few pictures here showing the context of where we are. There are a lot of huge, beautiful outcrops, mature trees. This is also one of the highest points of the park as well. The playground is within the Seneca Village site of Central Park, which is an African-American settlement that existed from 1825 to 1857, from 82nd to 89th Street, 7th to 8th Avenue. So it's about a 35-acre site. So over the years, the Conservancy has done a lot of archaeological investigation of this entire Seneca Village area. This is showing a photo of when one of those investigations was completed. We have also been working with the Director of Archaeology for this project in particular. We're going to be putting together a work plan for what we're doing. When we have the exact locations of the hoodings for the play equipment, we will do additional testing. We're also going to have ongoing monitoring during construction. We've done this for West 84th Street Playground just south of this playground. So we'll do the same thing. In addition to that, we have sort of a separate but ongoing related project related to how to commemorate and interpret the importance of Seneca Village in Central Park. There's one of the signs that we have up there, but we're looking to do a much larger, more important project. So this is a photo of one of the community meetings that we had this past year that was really well attended. We've been meeting with community groups, historians, descendants, and talking about what we should be doing for that commemoration and interpretation. So we will continue to have those discussions, and we will come back with any physical elements that are part of that project. So just to give you a little bit of history of the site, this is an 1856 VA map that shows particularly a lot of the detail of Seneca Village, the buildings, the rock outcrops. We've overlaid the egg-shaped playground just to give you the context of where this is within Seneca Village. As I said, this is a small area within the larger Seneca Village site. This is an 1864 annual report map that shows after Central Park was built, the park drives, the pathways, again, just showing where the playground is within the context of the site. This is an 1836 photograph of the playground just after it was built. It's really an open play playground. There's not that much there. It's really good benches. You can see a few slides, a few sets of swings, a sad playground, but that's what it was like. You can also see the park drive in the back and the transverse road just to the left. In the early 90s, the Conservancy did a project to reconstruct a portion of this playground. This was the schematic design here. And then this is a photograph in 1993 of the playground. This is a lot of the play equipment that has actually been removed over the past years as, for safety reasons. But this was what it looked like at the time. This is an aerial view showing the existing conditions of the playground as it currently exists. And I'm now going to turn it over to Nick Koster to go through the details.
Hi, everyone, Nick Koster. All right, so the two primary paths of travel to the playground are from Central Park West and from West 85th Street. And we have a few images to highlight these conditions. This is a view taken from West 85th Street, looking up towards the playground. This is a side view of that same approach, showing the steepness of it. This is a view crossing the 85th Street Drive up towards the playground. Here's where those two paths converge at the entrance to the playground itself. This is a Moses era addition with this green space ringed by benches. We're now going to look at the playground itself. So we've seen the aerial. This is just highlighting that the playground was comprised of a play space for 2 to 5-year-olds, as well as 5 to 12. Includes a large sand area, a 7-foot tall fence, a water feature, as well as some of the remaining play structures. Views of the playground. There are a lot of mature trees that we'll be incorporating into the design, as well as this playground has a really strong connection to the landscape and the views out to the park itself. Here's a view of the water feature. Some of the high fence and some of the existing benches. And some of the remaining play equipment. This playground is one of many within this part of the park. The larger Seneca Village landscape is a place where children in school groups use for landscape play. We have some swings in the area of the Pinetum in this part of the park. There's the Toll Family Playground, which is 2 to 5, which Diane mentioned was part of a reconstruction not so long ago, as well as the Diana Ross Playground. As you can see, this playground is unique in sort of its relationship to the landscape. A lot of the other ones are closer to the perimeter and surrounded by more dense vegetation. As part of this project, we're proposing to change the footprint of the playground and have it relate more to the landscape as well as the path. And we're making some modifications to accommodate some of the unique features of the site, both below and above grade. In terms of the footprint itself, we will be reducing the overall impervious surface, by adding a pervious surface to include a picnic area within the landscape. And we'll walk you through that in the next series of slides as well. We're going to walk through some side-by-sides just to go through the changes that are happening within the landscape to the park. So a series of 3 images that highlight these changes. So starting at the west, we've shown you the existing photos of the steep conditions leading up to the playground. As part of any project in the park that the Conservancy is working on, that's a program, one of the goals is to create accessibility to that project. So we will be regrading this path to create an accessible ramp to get you to the playground, both from the park perimeter as well as from the drive. The areas highlighted in the darker green are showing the extensive regrading within the landscape. There are also, you can see some benches that are near the entrance that will need to be relocated.
So that dark green is digging in, not building out.
Correct, yes, and we'll show you sections of that. This is the side-by-side of the existing and the proposed footprint of the playground itself. We're reconfiguring the entryway to create a path more aligned with the homesteading paths throughout the park. And pushing the entrance of the playground to the north and relocating 2 of those large mature trees out into the landscape. And on the eastern section, we will be really just resurfacing the paths and relocating some of the benches that needed to be moved due to the regrading for accessibility at the park entrance. Okay, so now to walk through those changes where we're cutting into the landscape. We've created a series of sections to walk through this and explain what we're doing here. This is the most extreme of those. It's coming up from West 85th Street towards the playground. There's a large rock outcropping. We'll be cutting down and the path will be inserted more into the landscape to create the accessible path. As well as using some boulders if required to help retain the steep slope adjacent to the rock outcropping. These next 2 cuts are much more gradual just to get the grades to align. And the second is coming up from the West 85th Street drive towards the playground. This is an example just north of the playground where an accessibility project. This is the handrail detail as well as showing the landings between on the accessible path. Looking at the playground itself, the playground is going to be for the 5 to 12 age group. It's going to include a climbing play structure, water play, strap swings, tire swing, and a picnic area. We have a series of sections that highlight the reduction in the height of the fence, going from a 7-foot high fence to a 4-foot high fence, the incorporation of the mature trees and the moving of and realigning of the edge of the fence to get it aligned more into the landscape. This section here shows the integration of the picnic area and into the grove of mature trees on the western side of the site. I should mention that also with the materials that we're using, this is a playground that will be, as we're making it accessible both in the play equipment as well as the seating typologies that we're using. We're using benches that are typically found in the park outside of the playground. The wooden concrete benches at the entrance, which will mirror those on the southern side. The settees placed out within the paths of the park. Within the playground itself, there will be both wooden concrete benches, custom stone benches, custom wood benches, as well as the picnic tables that are accessible. The pathwork, very typical for the park, we'll be using asphalt paving with a sloped granite block curb, and for the curb and handrail. For the handrails, we'll be using both an adult height and a child height, as this is leading up to a playground. For the fence typologies ringing the playground, we have two typologies around the playground itself. We'll be using a 4-foot high steel picket fence around the picnic area. We'll be using a 4-foot high wire mesh fence, and for the gate, the yellow. This is just an example of one of the gates that we've used in the other playgrounds that have been restored recently within the park. And for the surfacing material, we'll be using a granite threshold at the gate, asphalt for the paths both outside and inside the playground, a gray playground safety surfacing, exposed aggregate concrete with a flush concrete border for the water feature, and a bonded wood carpet material, which is the pervious material that will be located in the picnic area in orange. And finally, we'll leave you with a side-by-side.
Thank you. We have some questions, so we'll start with Commissioner Ginsburg and then Commissioner Goldblum.
So I have one question. Is the asphalt paving, pervious asphalt?
It's not, no.
Is there a reason why it isn't?
We have, from the geotechnical borings, we do have quite high granite ledge within this area, so there's not a lot of opportunity to infiltrate water. And overall, we're reducing the amount of pervious by about 2%.
Commissioner Goldblum.
So what's the purpose in changing the fencing for the area?
To make it more porous to the landscape.
So the chain link or material you're going to use there is more transparent than the bar fence?
It is, yes.
And what's the purpose of the surfacing in that area being that bonded wood as opposed to? That's good.
Sure. It's material that is the slopes in this area. We're able to create an accessible path through it. And just due to the heavy nature and use, the bonded wood carpet is a material that we've found lasts for a good amount of time. The Conservancy maintains it. It doesn't get muddy if it was, say a glass or a typical wood chip area. You don't have children digging or burrowing into it.
And I appreciate the exclusion of the potential foundation from Seneca Village from the site of the playground. Has there been a finding of specific artifacts in that space? Do we know that the house that was on the map is really there?
I believe we know that part of the foundation is there from the ground penetrating radar that has been done.
And have there been any other findings over the site of any other artifacts of note?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Neil, I'm former Vice President for Plan Service and Consulting. I'm actually one of the projects I'm consulting on is Seneca Village. Was your question whether from the mic was your question whether there has been other archaeological investigation throughout the entire Seneca Village site?
No, just in the area of this project.
Yeah, so in the area of this project, all around the perimeter and the potential construction site have been field testing and the ground penetrating radar. The outline that you see of that building is the foundation of the corner was found.
Okay, great. So nothing else was found in this area. Excellent.
Okay, other questions? Yes, Commissioner Jefferson.
I have a conceptual question about, it's 1936, the plan with a circle. Then 1991, the plan became an action and an oval. Why are you changing it now to a English plan without any footprint? What's the concept behind that?
Concept for changing the footprint. Yeah, so with the change in the footprint, really to integrate it more into the landscape, with the way in which we're thinking about the use and activity within the playground, the structures we'll be creating themselves to create views both into the playground and out to the landscape, really providing more opportunity for connection to the surrounding and larger Seneca Village site.
So it's a aesthetic change, essentially, that's a formal change.
Formal, yes.
And the second question is, the existing bridge in the 1991 scheme, the wood bridge, was that incorporated in this new one?
The bridge there, this bridge here? Yeah. This bridge, I believe, has actually been since removed. This is a photo from a few years ago. It largely deteriorated.
Right, so it's not there. Okay. And the third question, the increase, and this is just a picnic area, we increased the picnic area by 16%.
Yes, yeah. So I believe it's about, let's see if we can go back to that slide. Right, so the picnic area, it's about 6,000 square feet of the bonded wood carpet material.
But the whole impetus was to increase the picnic area.
Yes,
okay,
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
And the existing footprint of the playground itself is a decrease.
Okay, other questions? Yes, Commissioner Lutfi.
So, with the fencing, you obviously have a hierarchy. I think, Commissioner Goldblum focused on some of this. How do you determine what kind of fencing goes where?
Sure. So with the fencing, these photos that we're showing are actual examples from other playgrounds within the park. So typically the wire mesh fencing, which you're seeing over highlighted in red, is when there is a strong relationship to landscape or softscape elements. And so we're using that in the picnic area. And so as well as some of the other playgrounds that we showed, like Diana Ross, which is located around trees, that would be a type of fencing that we propose using there. The picket, the 4 foot high, overall the Conservancy has really gone great lengths to make sure that we're reducing the heights of the fences to be much more approachable and friendly, and the picket detail, there are a few variations of those that we would typically use for a playground that is more exposed within the landscape.
Okay, I have another question. So you had mentioned a couple of things that you wanted to increase the variety and the quality of the play, but also try to retain some of the interesting existing aspects of the playground while
looking to, things that were, also more interesting and sustainable. Well, and you also mentioned that there are quite a few parks nearby. You're going to playgrounds, sorry. So in looking at this from a very holistic standpoint, not only the need to make some of the changes that you have that are structural or whatever, do you look at the other parks and look at them all within this context and say, okay, we are going to try to, this is what they are, but they're slightly different typologies. And within the typology that we have, we are going to put things in here that either further differentiate or connect. Like, is that part of your whole thinking? I mean, that's something that's strategy now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's aligned with the plan for play. Do you want to
explain some of that?
Sure. Yeah, Elaine's been
understandable
with this.
Small and then
Absolutely.
Yeah, just because I was with the planning department for 20 years and worked on the plan for play, I'll take this one. We do, I'm too close. Okay, right here. Yeah, you have to stand about a foot back. Okay, just talk loudly. Okay, sorry. So yeah, we do look at the 21 playgrounds in the park as a system. And definitely as we're redoing each individual playground, there's considerations of both what are the other adjacent playgrounds. There's generally a history of just whenever the playground was last redone, of it being either a younger, there's 2 to 5 and there's 5 to 12 playgrounds, and there's some that have both. So we look at which age groups are being served and the communities that are currently being served. And then there are, because different playgrounds were built and then potentially rebuilt in different eras, there are kind of different eras of sort of design. So the West 81st Street playground, for example, on the other side was one of the kind of last and most intact, like Moses era playgrounds. So we kind of went with that in that case. There are other playgrounds. There's 5 or 6 playgrounds in the park that were built in the 60s and 70s that we call the adventure style playgrounds, that were built by designers, Richard Datner and Paul Fleeberg, which his was like a very naturalistic playground. So we're generally looking to sort of the history and what's valuable about the design of that playground, and then the community groups being served and how they all balance each other out in the system of playgrounds.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, other questions? All right, we'll move to public testimony. We may have more questions after that. So we have one person in the room who signed up, Jeremy Woodruff.
Good morning, Jeremy Woodruff speaking for the Victorian Society of New York. This proposal is unlike the last playground the commission reviewed in Riverside Park, which was a significant part of a major and now historic enlargement and redesign of that park. The perimeter playgrounds in Central Park, in contrast, were piecemeal incursions with no design distinction of their own. We concur with the proposed approach of modifying the perimeter and lowering the fence to reduce the playground's intrusiveness. However, there are aspects of the proposal that are not appropriate. First, the new fenced picnic area will be as intrusive as the playground itself. It will replace a lovely pastoral lawn with large trees. The overall increase in the play and picnic areas combined is inappropriate. Picnic tables could be placed within the modified but not expanded boundaries of this playground. Second, paving the grass triangle near the playground entrance will result in an oversized area of asphalt. The grass should either remain or the paved intersection should be much reduced in size, making it typical of historic path intersections. Finally, and most importantly, are the 2 duplicate ADA compliant paths, which introduce highly inappropriate physical features to the park. Compliant access is important. It's a difficult task to provide it on a site that was purposely designed as a foil to rectilinear and level city streets. But we also know that ADA law does not require the destruction of character-defining features of historic sites. and the circulation systems in Central Park are nothing if not character defining. This extends not just to the circulation plan, but to the physical design of the paths, which were intended to recede and disappear into the landscape. That is why originally they almost never included retaining walls, raised curbs, railings, or patterned pavements. The Conservancy's use of unit pavers at the landings, raised curb edges, and often double layers of railings and fences exacerbate the effects of these installations. These ADA compliant paths are being installed wherever capital projects are being implemented without an overall plan for the park. It's certain that over time, these installations will severely alter the park's character. They are already doing so. The Commission should insist that a park-wide strategy and plan be developed that will minimize these impacts and look at alternative means of providing access. And for this project, certainly only one of the two routes is needed. They both lead to the same playground entrance and enter the park at nearly the same place on Central Park West. The existing accessible path to the West 84th Street playground or the 85th Street Drive entrance that's now closed to vehicles is the most logical route, adding but a few feet to the path of travel, but significantly reducing the amount of fencing, railings, curbs, distinctive pavements, and other intrusive features. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room who wishes to speak on this item? Noting that there isn't, I will turn it over to Gregory Collard to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have a few hands raised in the meeting. So first we'll be hearing from Megan Fitzpatrick from Landmark West. Megan Fitzpatrick, I've promoted you panelist. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. Megan Fitzpatrick speaking on behalf of Landmark West. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee appreciates that this playground is getting an update after many decades of heavy play. Taking inspiration from the natural landscape of the park and also its cultural landscape will benefit the playground in many ways. We also acknowledge the necessary accessibility features that will be incorporated in order for the park to be enjoyed by all. Our committee is glad to see the Conservancy has implemented their management plan for play, for rebuilding and maintaining the playground in the park, and more oversight and regulation for our scenic landmarks is always positive. We like the idea of utilising natural materials like wood for the play structures and hope through this framework that these are monitored and maintained effectively. We understand the need for accessible routes to the playground, but seeing as Section AA is the most severe change, we wonder if both pathways from West 85th Street need to be altered. Adapting only the secondary path, accessible by the pedestrian-used road, will achieve accessibility while maintaining more of the graded landscape. Our committee's other main concern lies with the Conservancy's undefined future project for interpreting Seneca Village, a largely African-American community erased to build Central Park. This is currently independent but related to the playground redevelopment, but as this is the first major disturbance to the ground since the 1930s, it seems an ideal moment to honour the past and do a proper archaeological survey of the grounds under this play space. It's highly unlikely that any remaining archaeological material will not be disturbed during construction. Material could exist outside of any archaeological structure, such as trash or deposits on the exterior or a foundation trench wider than the walls themselves. Surveys of excavations may help reveal what potential materials exist and mitigate their damage. We recommend that archaeological research is undertaken at this critical site for understanding African American history on the Upper West Side and the city as a whole. We also advocate for the interpretation of Seneca Village to then be sensitively incorporated into the playground design for educational purposes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we will be hearing from Nuha Ansari from the Friends of the Upper East Side. Nuha Ansari, I've promoted you to panelist. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Chair Carroll, Honourable Commissioners, my name is Nuha Ansari and I'm speaking on behalf of Friends of the Upper East Side Historic Districts. Friends' Preservation Committee commends the applicants on their development of a framework to guide the playground renovations in Central Park. Our Preservation Committee approves of the plans to bring the 85th Street playground and paths up to ADA compliance standards and playground safety guidelines. We do not object to the planned regrading of the existing paths, although we urge the applicants to reconsider the plan to build a new boulder retaining wall alongside the original rock outcrop at the path from West 85th Street to the playground, and to find a more sympathetic solution that would not so greatly alter the experience of the historic park path. We also wonder why it's necessary to remove the triangle of lawn in front of the playground entrance area and replace it with asphalt paving. Friends' Preservation Committee supports the proposal to install a lower fence around the playground, enhancing the connection between the play area and the surrounding park. And we like the lightness of the proposed mesh fencing. Our committee does, however, question the need for such a large fenced-in picnic area, as there are many opportunities for picnicking nearby in the park already. In terms of the proposed playground features, our Preservation Committee believes that the introduction of new boulders in the water play area seems artificial and redundant in the context of the park, which is, after all, full of real boulders. We urge the applicants to avoid a faux rustic style in their choice of play equipment, which lacks the originality that has historically characterized Central Park's playgrounds. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. And next up, we will be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I've promoted you to panelist. So please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC realizes that this playground is in need of renovation, and we thank the Central Park Conservancy for taking the time to share this presentation with us. We commend the Conservancy for altering the playground's geometry away from its strict oval shape. We feel that the park's new undulating form is an improvement for 2 reasons. First, it allows for the known foundation of a Seneca Village structure, which is currently covered by the playground, to be located outside the new playground boundaries so that the site and the historic foundation may be further excavated, made public, or otherwise interpreted and commemorated. Second, we believe that the new undulating boundaries of the playground relate better to Olmsted and Vaux's historic landscape. That said, we are troubled by the fact that this proposal enlarges the overall footprint of the playground by 17%, which we feel is an inappropriate imposition on the park's green space and historic design. We believe that the overall footprint of the playground should remain the same, and that accessible picnic tables should be included within that area. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I am looking through the attendees list now, and I do not see any further hands raised. So I will note for the record that we received letters recommending approval from Manhattan Community Board 5, Manhattan Community Board 7, and Manhattan Community Board 8, respectively. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carol.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'd like to ask if you'd like to respond to any of the comments we've heard.
Yeah.
Sure. I think one of, are you guys hearing me all right? Yeah. Okay. One of the common threads was the expansion of the picnic area into the landscape. I think the Central Park Conservancy would like to acknowledge that we're open to looking at that and taking another look at the size of that area. Let's see. In regard to the ADA path comments, I believe both of the paths, as mentioned early on in the presentation as a clarification, will be depressed into the landscape. So we find them aesthetically really to not detract from what is there. With sort of our overall ADA strategy to provide accessibility from the park perimeter or a drive to programs that are undergoing capital projects. We feel that both of them are important in terms of equity. Let's see. Does anyone else from our Central Park Conservancy team have comments that they would like to respond to?
Just, I think, I heard kind of a question suggestion about the archaeology, and just want to reinforce, which I think we covered in the presentation, that that the Conservancy is working with the landmark staff, archaeology staff, and we'll be doing additional field testing in the area of footing throughout the construction project. As we do whenever there's an archaeological potential in the site, we'll be doing monitoring. So all of that will kind of continue to add to the information that we have about Seneca Village. I think there was kind of a suggestion that that maybe this interpretation could be kind of incorporated into the playground. We sort of see the interpretations kind of separate layers, and so anything that we do learn kind of continue interpretation is also multi-pronged. So we currently do public programming, education programs, tours, and continue to look to other opportunities to kind of layer in interpretation as we go.
Just moving to the testimonies brought up questions or concerns about the green triangle that is currently in the existing plan. Just to speak to a little bit more about that. That was a Moses era addition to the park. I believe we've looked through the park at large. That's really an atypical condition. In the park, we don't have intersections of paths that have green spaces in the middle of them. We believe in the 30s this might have been done there. In the photograph, as well as the archival surveys of the park, there was a tree located there, so that might have been the reason for it. The proposed condition of the asphalt space, as Diane had mentioned early on, that this is a space that people gather for Seneca Village tours. So we feel that an asphalt condition in this location is much more appropriate than grass for that activity.
Thank you. Commissioners, any final questions? Yes, Commissioner.
And one archaeological question. It does appear, according to the old map, that there were a couple of foundations right pretty much where that triangle that we were just talking about is. Was there any research to see if that specific area had any remnants in it?
Did you say in the triangle? Or?
Yeah, it looks, if you go back to your page 10 of 58, you'll see that like the oval and, the oval kind of interrupts a house to the north, and then it kind of touches two structures to the south. Bingo. One more. There we go. You see those two little buildings to the south?
Mm-hmm.
So that looks to me like it's around where we're about that Y, that little triangle.
So we did testing in areas that were not under the playground or under the path. So we did a number of tests around.
Yeah.
And then what we found was a portion of the foundation on the north. Right. We did not find anything in the areas that did test on the south. When we actually dug up the path, that would be part of the archaeological construction.
Great, thanks.
All right. Any other final questions, commissioners? Okay. Let's move to close the hearing and begin our discussion. Commissioner Lutfi, would you make a motion to close the hearing? So moved. Thank you. Commissioner Chen, would you second that motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. And Commissioner, this is a scenic landmark, so we are advisory. The Public Design Commission is binding. And so we will have our discussion today. The applicants have expressed, I think, some willingness to continue to explore the size of the picnic area if that becomes part of our comments. But we will have a report issue that incorporates all of our comments. There was a question at a recent, when we saw the dinosaur park, about the commission's review of advisory reports. And I just wanted to let you know, we are studying that. We've actually analyzed and looked at data going back 5 years and found that in 5 years, only 5 reports had additional comments in them. 3 of those we know were the Parks Department has continued to in the past make revisions in response to those comments. We're still looking at the other 2, so we'll have a more detailed conversation with you all once we've completed the analysis. But I just wanted to let you know where we were to date on that. And so now we'll begin our discussion. They are proposing to change the footprint of the park, partly for aesthetic and programming functional reasons, but also the benefit of that is that it will allow for the foundation that has been already discovered to be outside of the play area. And then they are changing play surface materials, including this picnic area with the bonded wood covering to the side, and changing the pathways leading to the park to create more accessible paths with depressed ramps within them. And finally, reducing the height of the fences around the play area, and that would include a more transparent mesh around the picnic area. With respect to play equipment, the commission has historically not really regulated the play equipment per se, as that's sort of a functional thing that comes and goes. But we do look at the hardscapes, the fencing, and paving changes. So we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Chapin, would you like to start this one? If you're not comfortable,
yeah, sure. Yes, as you were just reflecting, playgrounds are altered on a regular basis to, reflect new safety regulations or changes in perspectives about children's play, or just to upgrade degraded features. So, they're somewhat of a more temporary nature than some things that we see. In any event, I find in general, I think this is an appropriate proposal. First, obviously, accessibility is very important. And if other people may have any comments about the precise way in which that's achieved, but I think that in general it's appropriate. I think that the fence reduction is desirable. The increased use of permeable surface and some natural materials, I think are all very appropriate. And as far as the individual play equipment, it's evolving issue in playground design. You see different things happen. The particular things proposed look to me, with a couple of grandchildren, kind of appropriate that they would find them interesting. So, and I think that using the mature trees is and trying to integrate as much into the landscape is also appropriate. So I actually find this fine from my perspective, and we'll see what others have to say.
Commissioner Goldberg.
Okay, thanks. I generally agree. I think it's a good proposal. I think that the modification of the shape is totally fine. I don't think that there's anything historically significant as to the original shape, which it was not in and of itself the original shape, which has been changed. I think that the integration of the line of the park's perimeter, or the playground's perimeter, with the tree scape is a way to better integrate it into the landscape and kind of blend it better so that it has less of a kind of formal imposition on the site and more integrates into it. I have no concern about the pathways, which the sections to me proved were modest and appropriately kind of scaled and detailed into the park. I think that the materials of the paving are appropriate as well. I think they're much more appropriate and much more kind of subtle and mellow than the ones we saw at the dinosaur playground.
I'm a little curious about this bonded wood stuff. I'm not familiar with it. I wonder if it's as pervious as they say. I do think that if the Conservancy is open to reducing the size of that area, it's probably a good idea. I do understand the need for such an area that would be protected where your kids wouldn't escape into the woods while you're having lunch. But I do question the change of the fence. I think that that's a detail that would just attract attention to itself. That would appear to those on the outside of the playground to be peculiar. I think if they wanted it to blend in, they could plant shrubs around it, which we've seen as a very common technique in the park. But I don't think that the change in fence is a good idea. I think they should pick one and stick with it. I think the reduction of the height is very, very good. The reduction of 4 feet is a major boon, and it's something that we've seen for a number of years now as a major positive feature in the park. It was just wonderful. And lastly, I just want to say thank you very much for that update. It was something I was very much wondering about. And it sounds like it'll be an interesting set of findings. And lastly, I do think that if they do find something of those two, I mean, it's very interesting that they actually found the foundation of the house to the north where they expected it to be, which leads one to believe that they will find foundations for the buildings to the south, which would be fascinating. And so I think that the applicant should work carefully with the staff so that when those foundations or remnants are found, they can somehow be integrated into the park in a way that would make them visible and help the public understand the important history of Seneca Village.
Okay, thank you very much. And I did want to note that Amanda Sullivan, our Director of Archaeology, is here, and she'll be working closely with them throughout the process. Commissioner Ginsburg?
Well, I think in general, as the other commissioners described, this is appropriate, I can support it. However, I want to express a general concern. As somebody who grew up playing in Central Park as the adventure playgrounds were introduced, and when the sons were now in their 20s, were initially the playground we played at was an adventure playground that was then updated for accessibility, safety surfaces, etc. We're really losing something. And I don't know the answer, but the adventure playgrounds were wonderful. And also because they were different and non-standard, were wonderful. And some of them are now lining up that they, in a sense, could be landmarked as something you have these other issues that may prevent that. So wherever possible, trying to use equipment, and I understand equipment is something we typically don't talk much about, but is different that encourages adventure, I think would really be good, because I worry that making things safe and accessible, which are both really good objectives, we're losing something.
We did actually carefully review the adventure playgrounds. We treated them a little more permanent fixtures rather than playground equipment. Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, we agree with the Commissioner's comments. I think this is appropriate, and I think I have no problem with the pathway with grading. Commissioner Ginsburg and the applicant in the Conservancy presentation raised an interesting question for me, which is that, very few parks is as historic as Central Park or as famous as Central Park. And you have the ability to preserve, different snapshots of different playgrounds over the timeline. And so, even though the playgrounds are not so popular, but I do see that, it may be an interesting exercise how you look at playground over time and whether we should preserve certain elements of it, because, whereas, not that we want to preserve Moses Era's playground, but there's a golden update. I'm more excited about the opportunity to find out the Seneca Village. I'm really curious. Keep us posted on that one. This is a golden opportunity out of the playground to really look at what you can find down there.
Thank you, Commissioner Lutfi.
I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made. I want to thank the applicant, it was one of your first slides, for engaging the community as you have undertaken this process and project, and for being receptive to the input that you have heard so far today. Thank you also for answering my earlier questions, which gives some insight into how you think and look at each park individually and holistically. I personally think that you've done a good job overall, and I'm happy you're willing to go back and investigate where people have made requests. I personally like this more organic shape that is evolving here, and the desire to try. It's very hard when you're creating this, distinct play area, but to try to sort of make it integrate in a more as natural way to other aspects of the surrounding area. I think the paths being depressed, path depression to make the park accessible works very well. And I am also very excited that you are going to continue to work with staff on the archaeology. I think the reduction of the fence height is wonderful. And, I appreciate the fact that you might need to have two different fence typologies, but I'm a little more in favor of trying to streamline the number that you have and stick with one. And let's see. And I appreciate, just where you're going in terms of thinking of a children's play and the use of materials and the whole issue of sustainability. And that's it. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chu.
Yes, I'm in agreement with many of my fellow commissioners' comments. I think overall, I was saying it's appropriate, the proposal. I think that the change to the footprint, although I do appreciate the purity of the oval, because I do feel that the difference between the landscape and the play area is still going to be predominantly defined by the paving. And that's visually what I will see the difference between the two types of spaces. So I just encourage that the diagram of the new shape, more amoeba-like than oval, is clear. And to that, I'm in agreement with Commissioner Goldblum's comment about the fence. My instinct is that I'd like the perimeter to be pure so that there is a clear difference between landscape and the play area, which will be clear anyways because of the difference in paving and the lack of green on the floor or the ground plane. So if you could look at a version that maybe made the pickable area, I don't know, I can imagine maybe something that's parallel to it and it's a slot that covers more area. As a parent, when my kids were little, I always wanted to sit near them. So if it's too far away, I feel like kids would be maybe too far away from you. So that it's more integrated may help the diagram. The lower fence, great. Pathways, ADA, I think everything that the park is doing to make paths accessible is positive. It is a historic landmark, this park, but so are many of our treasured buildings. And a lot of their problems are they don't meet ADA to today's standards, and we need to improve that. So totally support that. That's essentially my comments.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Master.
Yes, I'm also very supportive of this proposal. I think that the applicant has done a great job in very carefully considering the needs of, the community, as well as the changing needs of, the kids, incorporating the picnic table, et cetera. So I'm supportive of the footprint changes, because I think you're trying to really, blend to the landscape and, I guess incorporate the mature trees, et cetera. The regrading of the path for accessibility, of course, is necessary, and, is something that we have to do. And then I think the third thing was really lowering the height of the fence from 7 feet to 4 feet, which is definitely a good thing. So I'm very supportive of this.
So I just have one quick point. And that is that the change in the form does seem to some extent in response to the existing foundation's findings. I can see the indents at both of those places. I think that's a great reason for the change in the plan. And I also like the idea if they find something on the south side that you created, that's at the entry point. You took out the landscape island, all that supports for this is what this place used to be and the story there. So that would be amazing.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Jefferson?
Well, in the history of this park, aesthetic judgment has been one that's been debated for 100 years or so. And the issue here for me is that changing the footprint, if it's going to be changed because of functional issues or discovery issues, it should come up right away. I should know about it so I can make a decision. And telling me afterwards that, this is why it was done, it clouds my decision. I think the naturalistic approach to landscaping is fine. It's been around for a long time. And so is the footprint in setting up a geometric figure. It's been around for a long time. I think that they did with the fences and the benches were very nice. I mean, appropriate. I find the height of the fence quite appropriate. I think smaller fences are fine. I think the footpaths reducing it to the level up so everyone can have access. We can argue about that. So it's all appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Holford-Smith.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add to other comments because I agree with almost everything that you said. I am very excited by the prospect of discovering some foundations at Seneca Village. So just encouraging that, that could be incorporated into the entry if they're found at that location.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I think we can make a motion to approve this issue a positive report. But note at the end that many commissioners recommended a single picket fence around the entire shape and footprint of the park, and obviously that they work closely with our archaeology department on any discovery.
Am I doing?
Yeah.
I also wanted to say before I start that I didn't mention Seneca Village, and I think it's terrific that they have what they're doing, and they should continue in terms of any archaeological exploration and the descriptive signage. I actually read it off the slide, most of it anyway, and it's a very very interesting indeed. So. In any event, in matter of an advisory report, Borough Manhattan, LPC 2404565 Central Park, West 85th Street Playground seems landmark. A playground originally constructed in the 1930s and pathways within an English Romantic style public park designed in 1857 to 1858 by Frederick Law Olmsted and Humphrey Law. The application is to modify the playground footprint and pathways and replace fencing. I recommend that a favorable report be issued finding that the proposed changes to the footprint of the playground will help protect known archaeological resources and mature trees without eliminating any significant historic features of the playground or surrounding landscaping. That the regrading of the paths will help provide barrier-free access and feature gradual sloping, which will be well integrated into the surrounding naturalistic landscaping. That the modest increase in overall paving will facilitate an expansion of public amenities within the playground and eliminate an atypical 20th century lawn feature within a pathway intersection. The pervious bonded wood carpet paving will feature coloration and technical variations that will harmonize with the surrounding landscape. That the impervious paving within the playground will be in keeping with paving typically found within the park's playgrounds in terms of materials and neutral finishes and less than the existing paving footprint. That the fencing at the playground and paving and handrails at the pathways will be in keeping with fencing, paving, and handrails at playgrounds and pathways within the park in terms of their simple design, placement, size, materials, finishes, and details. However, I also recommend that as they look at a single picket fence for the playground and also they work closely with our archaeological staff in terms of potential future findings with regard to the Seneca Village. And with the proposed work will not detract from the significant historic and naturalistic character of the Central Park scenic land.
Thank you. Commissioner Holford Smith, would you second that motion? I second it. All right. And John, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen. Aye. Commissioner Chu. Aye. Commissioner Ginsburg. Commissioner Goldblum. Aye. Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson. Aye. Commissioner Buckley.
Aye.
Commissioner Masters.
Aye.
10 in favor, none opposed. The motion passes.
That's approved. Thank you.
I'm just going to note one note on the schedule. We did post this online yesterday, but public hearing item number 2 was laid over. That was LPC 24-04256, 695 Hudson Street. So that will not be presented today. We'll see that at a future hearing date. We'll now move to public hearing item number 3, LPC 23-12139. It's for an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 585, lot 15, 4 Grove Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District. It's a federal style row house designed by James and Wells, built in 1833 to 34. The application is to clad existing dormers, alter the roof line and add a dormer, and excavate the rear yard.
Hi there, my name is Jasper Campshire. I'm working with Neil Logan Architect, and I'm joined today with Neil Logan. We've been working on the design of the renovation of a historic row house at 4 Grove Street. And with a team including Old Structures engineers. The building is located in the Greenwich Village Historic District, southwest corner, as you can see in the image at the left, and then zoomed in at the right, where Grove Street meets Hudson, 3 doors in on the south side of Grove Street. Here's an aerial photo with the 4 Grove Street outlined in blue, and you can see at the top of the image to the west, larger buildings at 2 Grove and turning the corner onto Barrow at 72 Barrow, and then again PS3 to the north of 4 Grove on the right side of the image. These are 5 and 6 story buildings, which is to say the building is not in its original historic context. Here, a recent photograph of the so-called Grove Street Road, our building outlined again in blue, and then to the left, each of 6, 8, and 10 Grove Street, which together make up the row. Each of these buildings, the Techno style built as between 1825 and 1834. 4 Grove was the last of the 4 built. And then maybe also worth noting at the far left corner by the bicycle and tree in the image, the entrance to Grove Court, which I'll mention later in the presentation.
Here, historic reference photos, the 1940s tax photo and a very kind of low resolution 1980s tax map photo. Historical conditions, we have a full set of historic American building survey drawings. These HABS drawings have really been a guide in our design of the project. And here, existing conditions on the left, the front facade, and on the right, the rear facade, a kind of modern vinyl siding. You can see that as well at the left, lower left of the image, a modern aluminum glass enclosed porch. And here, front elevations, the going from left to right, the historical is drawn in 1936 HABS drawings, the existing and proposed. One of the aspects of our overall application that is subject to today's hearing is the replacement of the vinyl dormer siding with a non-historical material. And here, kind of zooming in at these enlarged elevations, you'll see the historical elevations from the HABS drawings, the existing, which is a roof material, a kind of pretty degraded, modified roof membrane, and vinyl siding at the sides, as you can see in the lower right photograph. And then our proposal, which is to replace the entire roof surface material with a metal standing seam, and that includes at the dormer sides a finish of a flat-coated copper. And one of the principal reasons for wanting to extend the standing seam to the siding is for a superior waterproofing. We found in our probes and investigations of the existing dormer structures that can be quite deteriorated from water damage, and we think extending a metal standing seam to the siding will do well to protect the structure for decades and hopefully centuries longer. Here, a very close precedent, which is around the corner at 77 Bedford Street, the so-called Isaac Hendricks House, the oldest extant building in the village. And on the left, you'll see from 1799 to 1800, I think it was built. And on the left, you'll see circa 1923 full dormer with dormer. With in this photograph from 2014, a non-historical siding, and then circa 2016 replacement of that non-historical siding with the metal roof, kind of similar to what we're proposing around the corner at Ford Road. And other aspects of our overall application, again, subject to today's hearing, have more to do with the rear elevations. This is the altering of the roof line to restore the historical pitch of the rear roof. And as part of that, install a new artist window or studio dormer that recalls that original single dormer. As well as in the lower part, you can see of the proposed against the existing to excavate the garden level. And then again, this was brought up that potentially worth talking about today, but I think likely eligible for staff level approval is a kind of slight reconfiguration of a few of the existing openings at the rear elevation that you can see between existing and proposed, this to realign that rear facade. One of the aspects of the proposal includes this minimally visible existing modern addition to the rear of the building, which is done, we think, sometime maybe in the 70s or 80s. We're not entirely sure. But through, as you can see in the site plan, from Barrow Street, that's in the lower corner, that small blue rectangle, that's the area from which the
building is currently the top floor, part of the top floor of the building is currently visible through a tiny sliver of a private courtyard at 72 Barrow. So in the top section, you can see from a distance of, I think, 200 or 230 feet, that small portion of the top floor that is visible. And then in these photographs on the right and then zoomed in on the left, sorry, and then zoomed in on the right, that orange rectangle represents the area of the building that is currently and also would be proposed to be minimally visible. There's a tree in between these that from a winter photo, so it's kind of seasonally visible. And mostly, I think it's worth noting that what you see beyond is actually the building at the north side of Grove Street. This is PS3, so that kind of dominates the view through. Here, zooming in, sorry. Zooming in on these enlarged elevations of the existing proposed and the historical elevations there. So you can see historically the roof pitch mimic the front, so a kind of pretty steep 30-degree pitch, and a single small dormer in the center. The modern addition there is existing, is a kind of raises the roof, and then what we're proposing to do, and excited to propose restoring that roof pitch on either side, and then adding an addition of a studio dormer that recalls that original dormer. This a new one, however, allowing for greater access to solar access and kind of utility. One of the clients is an artist. So we'll use it as a studio. And of course, we recognize this artist window or studio dormer is now a kind of classic neighborhood vernacular. A few kind of classic examples down the street on the left-hand side, 90 Grove Street. I think maybe the oldest such addition done on a 1827 federal style building, and the addition done in 1893 by Carrere and Hastings. And then on the right, 44 and 42 Stuyvesant, 44 Stuyvesant being the oldest extant continuously residential building in Manhattan, and 44, both of these buildings having studio dormers, 44 on the right being in design quite similar to the one we're proposing. We're proposing as well an excavation of the garden level. Here, as part of that, you can see the kind of contextual site section, the existing on the left. You'll see the neighboring building to the west, 2.5 Grove, 4 Grove in the middle, and then 6 Grove to the east. You'll see a kind of the existence of kind of a no uniformity at the existing grade. The proposed will continue with that. So here, existing yard plan and proposed yard plan, and then existing section and proposed section below, as well as photographs you can see of the existing yard at the left. And then this, the yard section here, you can see is kind of the retaining wall with a face brick finish that you'll see it in the image coming up, that it recalls the typology of the 3 other houses on the road, their historic conditions of these high bricked-in yards. You can see on the left here, 10 Grove Street, 1940s photograph of the brick wall that is still there, as well as on the right, a 1925 photograph each of 10, 8, and 6 Grove with these high bricked-in wall yards, and we're proposing to essentially extend that typology 1 yard further, benefit from the kind of recalling that kind of historical character, but by lowering the yard, doing so without with the benefit of not having to create that yard at the existing grade. And here, the rear elevations, again, historical, existing, proposed. I think that's about it.
Thank you very much.
The proposal to be, well considered and the kind of historic character of Greenwich Village and kind of restorative of that character, appropriate, and hope you support it. And I'll look forward to any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. We do have some. Commissioner Goldblum.
Okay. What was the original material of the roof?
We don't know. We don't know. I think typically these roofs would be slate or metal.
Slate or metal.
Yeah.
And there's no explorations or anything that you've done underneath that bitumen material that would show anything.
Not that we could find. We did probes.
How far up the dormer sides is the rock?
Oh, I mean, you can see. I think maybe it's back to the very first one of the very first images. You can see there. It's quite out of plumb and out of square. Just that whole roof is. It's maybe hard to see here, but you can see, when you're looking at it, I have images of the roof as well, but quite extensive. All of that wood structure that's on the underside of it is quite deteriorated.
Of the roof of the dormer.
Of the side of the dormer, of the wood framing of the entirety of the dormer that we could see.
Okay. Do you have a section through the a detail section? Okay.
Well, maybe, yeah.
Well, let's think of this for a second. What happened to the shutters?
We were proposing to remove those. Those were and we believe these are eligible for staff level review. You can see in the let's see your tax photographs that they were added after the 1980s. They're non-functional. They don't close.
How did Habs come up with them?
They were there before, I guess, but in these specific shutters were added after the 1980s. They're kind of non-functional.
Are there quintals? Are there historic quintals in the cast house? What are quintals in the brick?
No. In the brick there are. Yeah, those would remain.
Okay.
We're proposing to remove all the 1980s shutters or whatever they were added. Yeah,
but there's evidence of there having been historic shutters on the building.
Yes.
Good. Back north part of the proposal is the artist's studio window. Do you have a section through that?
Yes. Try to keep the presentation as succinct as possible. An appendix here. Let's see. Here's if you're curious the existing roof conditions.
Yeah.
I have a large elevation of here's the front, and then the rear. Here's some kind of overall.
Are you raising the cornice line from where it was to a new location on the back? Is that a cornice line? Is that gutter line where it was historically, as far as you know?
I think it.
So what's on the elevation here? We're moving it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's moved up slightly by an kind of an amount that I'm not sure I can let you know, but to say inches.
Okay. All right, thanks.
All right, Commissioner Ginsburg.
The metal roof that you're putting on the side of the dormers, what direction will the seams be running?
You can see, I think in this previous, right here, vertical.
Okay, could you run it horizontally?
You could, yeah, but it would be, I think, maybe inconsistent with the design generally.
And the other thing is that you're currently
waterproofing.
you're currently proposing it to be the same color as the roofing.
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Lead coated copper.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, Commissioner Hoffman Smith.
There's not clear about excavation in the back. Are you going lower than adjacent properties on
Yes,
either side?
yes. You can see those are kind of full section, but maybe I think more useful here is the this kind of off-site section here. So the existing, you can, the grade generally is kind of delineated by that light gray. Part of the foregrove currently is excavated to the level that we propose for the whole thing. And that's at the, where you would enter at the kind of rear of the building. There's a small kind of breeze area or areaway. We're proposing to extend that to the extent. Yeah.
Right, and then the buildings on the other side of the
On the back side, on the rear, at the rear lot, there's currently a retaining wall for that building, which is 2 Grove Street. I have you can see kind of, it's maybe hard to see here, but you can see the kind of retaining wall that exists at 2 Grove Street already for their lowered yard. That's a kind of concrete retaining wall. I'm not sure when, could be from the time of the construction of 2 Grove, I think around 1910 or 1920 is a concrete retaining wall.
Thanks. Okay, other questions? All right, let's see if there's any public testimony. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak on this item? Noting there isn't, I'll turn it over to Gregory to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have a few hands raised for this item. The first we'll be hearing from is Christine Conroy from the VSNY. Christine Conroy, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society, New York. Now, while we generally do not take issue with the exterior alterations to 4 Grove Street, we would like clarification on a few points. Firstly, we noticed that the proposed new facade does not include shutters, which are present in the HABS survey. We would urge the commissioners to require the maintenance and restoration of shutters on the street facade, and while slightly less crucial, we would be happy to see the shutters reinstated on the rear facade as per the HABS drawing. Additionally, while we are happy to see the restoration of the original pitch of the roof, we notice that the proposed new front-facing dormers seem to be pushed slightly forward. The historic position and profile of the dormers should be maintained. We do not believe standing seam metal siding is historically appropriate for the dormer sides. The cladding should be wood clapboards or a substitute material that matches clapboards in appearance, dimensions, and details. And finally, while we understand this review pertains to the exterior of the building and the interiors are not protected, we must express we are very sad to see a substantial redesign of the interior that appears to sacrifice multiple original mantels and federal era woodwork to alter the floor plan. Now, this house has remained relatively intact for over 200 years. And while we understand that renovations are needed to accommodate modern ways of life, we hope that the materials will be reused elsewhere in the house if they must be deinstalled from their original locations. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we will be hearing from Chloe Gregoire. Chloe Gregoire, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good day, Commissioners. My name is Chloe Gregoire, and I'm speaking on behalf of Village Preservation. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. Village Preservation finds the overall scope appropriate here. However, we ask that the excavation work at the rear yard be monitored closely and with care for this and the neighboring buildings. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we will be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. We'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC finds this proposal to be a sensitive approach to a federal-style house. We find the proposed dormer to be an example of how to achieve more headroom without compromising the federal envelope. That said, we feel that existing shutters on the front facade should be maintained, and that standing seam is an inappropriate cladding for the side walls of the dormers, which should be wood clapboard or perhaps a cementitious facsimile. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any further hands raised in the attendees list. So I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 2 recommends approval of the sensitive authentic restoration of the house and approval of the garden excavation in the wall, provided that care is taken with the underpinning to ensure that it is done in such a way that footing of the neighboring patio is not compromised. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to ask if you'd like to respond to the comments we heard mostly about the material of the shutters, the material on the sides of the dormers. And there was a question about whether you're pushing the dormers forward. So if you could answer that, that would be great.
Sure. Yeah, I missed, I had a hard time hearing the first part of, or the first of Miss Breton Conray's questions about the facade. I heard something about a facade, but I couldn't make out what it was. If anyone heard that. I can answer the others about the dormer, the front dormer. If it was seen to be relocated, it's not. It will be in the same place. It might be just a shifting on the page or something. And I guess I can address the idea of the wood siding, which came up from her and Lucy Levine as well. The wood siding is what the historic material would be. That's right. We like the idea of mainly as or at least in large part, the waterproofing ability of the standing seam. There's no doubt that that is a superior way of doing it. And from what we saw, that the structure was so deteriorated that we would like to be able to protect this nearly 200-year-old building for a long time in the future. The standing seam would do a great deal in doing that. She also mentioned the interiors. I think there are a few changes that we're planning to make to the interiors. This isn't really the purview of this public hearing, but it might be worth saying that we are planning on keeping all of the original wood flooring, the original old wood stairs, all of the original baseboard details, interior wood details, and repairing and restoring, keeping all of the plaster details throughout, or repairing them in kind. I think that and as well as keeping several of the existing fireplaces, the clients really think of themselves as stewards of this building. And the interior, when it's done, will look much like it does now. Yeah. With respect to the Chloe Gregoire from Village Preservation, thank you. And that had to do with the rear yard excavation. We filed with Landmarks and have a full set of supportive excavation and underpinning drawings. We have building monitoring plan that includes vertical, horizontal vibration movements and crack gauges. We take it very seriously and plan to be very careful about both the excavation and the installation of a new retaining wall. From Lucy Levine's comments, I think she also brought up the wood siding, which I've addressed. and the existing shutters or leaving the shutters at the front. That's from us a kind of design decision, and I think in combination with the fact that they are no longer functional, that's why we are proposing to remove them. But I guess we're open to what Landmarks has to say. But it should be said that the existing shutters from the 80s are non-functional. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any final questions? Okay, let's move to close our hearing. Commissioner Jefferson, would you make a motion to close the hearing? Thank you. Commissioner Holford Smith, would you second that motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. And so this is an application at the front. We're looking at the roof material, which is really more evident on the sides of the dormers. So it's really the sides of the dormers that we're looking at. It is also to alter the roof line at the rear, which restores the original pitch, and then to introduce a shed dormer at the back, and then the excavation at the rear yard. And as the applicant showed, none of the rear yards are continuous in their grade, and they are hemmed in behind them. So they're sort of hemmed in and not in any relationship at this point. So we'll begin our discussion with respect, Mark, to the removal of the shutters. They are removing non-historic shutters and keeping the remaining pintles. So that is technically not before the commission. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. Just confirming that. Okay. So we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Holford Smith, would you like to start this one?
Yes, thank you. Start with the dormers. And I think it's a very thorough presentation. And really great that you found the HABs drawings that had also understanding the original design of the building. I think that the standing seam material for the roof is appropriate. We don't know what it was. It probably was likely a slate or some kind of a shingle roof, but I can find the metal setting seem to be appropriate. But I can't find it appropriate for the dormers. They really, they're very, very visible. And traditionally they would always have been clad in a clapboard material. I think the concern about waterproofing, having the metal for that, I think if you used a waterproofing membrane underneath it, I think there are details you can do to ensure waterproofing of the dormer structure. And clad it with clapboard as the clapboard would be more like a, facade as opposed to the actual waterproofing membrane. So I think the change in the rear is also appropriate. Sort of brings back the original cornice line. I would like them to take a look and make sure that or try to align it with where it had been originally. I know that they're existing. There's no context there, but it would be nice if they could try to make it match the original cornice line. I think the installation of the studio windows at the rear is appropriate. I am concerned about the excavation, given the very tiny footprint of the yard and the fact that this is an 1833 house. I'd like to other officials have to say that I would not be in favor of the excavation.
Okay. And Corey, do you want to talk about the LPC's review of the engineering?
Sure. I mean, I think in this case, because the excavation is not occurring underneath the house itself and it's within the yard, it's not the typical application. We would do the enhanced engineering review, but that being said, there is underpinning of the neighboring extension, the neighboring building's extension. So we have, as the applicant noted, required submission of the full set of engineering drawings, engineer's report, monitoring plan, and the site survey. So, that's the level of submissions that the staff is comfortable with for this type of work. But of course, we could add an additional layer if the commission wanted that.
Right, or working with the FEU structural unit at DOB to have them do an enhanced review. Okay, Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Holsworth Smith on all of her comments, really, and particularly on the dormer material. But and I also, we'll be very careful about excavations. But if it is not, it's not touching adjacent buildings, and you can be assured that it's not going to in any way endanger this building. I can also approve that.
Okay. Commissioner Goldman?
Thank you. I agree with Ann about the roofing and dormer. I mean, the typical detail that I've seen is that you leave like 4 inches of roofing material kind of washing up onto the sides of the dormers. Excuse me. Sorry. And then the rest of it's covered with clapboard over a membrane. And that should do. I'm sorry. I think that the dormer should be a little narrower. It should leave more of the the historic slope visible. I think we've seen that on other projects. I think that the shutters. Right, I know. It is okay as is. I wouldn't vote against it, but I think it should be a little narrow.
Okay.
I think the shutters are really important. I know we can't mandate them, but as folks who view themselves as stewards of a historic house that is very old and very unusual in New York City, and where there is evidence of there having been functional shutters on the building, front and back, I think that they would be strongly encouraged to replace the non-functional shutters with functional shutters that conform with the HAB's design. I think that the excavation does not concern me if it doesn't concern Don Friedman. I think that I agree with Ann that the cornice line at the back should, as much as possible, conform with the historic. You can usually find that on the interior, like when you strip off the structure, you can usually see exactly where it was. So that will be visible. I think it's great that the applicant made the statement about maintaining the interior material, even though it is not something that we normally govern. I think it is very important, especially in a house of this vintage. That's it.
Okay, Commissioner Ginsburg.
In general, I agree with previous comments and find this approvable. I would agree that the siding should look like wood siding on the sides of the dormers, and there are ways you can use a fiber cement board and waterproofing behind it to make it as watertight as the standing seam metal, and that would be more appropriate. I agree with Commissioner Goldblum, although it isn't within our jurisdiction, that installing operable shutters that match the HAB drawings would be good. And I don't have an issue with the excavation.
Commissioner Chen.
Yeah, I agree generally with all the comments. I do think that given the nature and the context of this historic that sexual attention to prove. I think that the comment is excellent about the dormer siding, as well as respecting the original, as well as the commissioners wanting to reference to the shutters. I think the backyard, the excavation, we should treat it with care, with the engineering and all the are correct, and so I'll leave it as that.
Okay, Commissioner Levy.
I agree with most with all of the comments. Actually, the front dormers should not have standing seam on the side. I think The studio dormer in the back is fine and consistent with what's others in the neighborhood. I love the way they slightly modified the back. Actually, the changes are imperceptible and there's just a nice continuity there. And with the other buildings, and I don't have a problem with how it hits the ground as well. So, and the excavation, we're going to be having it's going to be done with an engineer, so I can work with that as well. And I'm open about the shutters. So, okay, well, that's a encouragement. And we're encouraging it, but it's not going to be part of the motion. Okay. Commissioner Chu?
I agree with all my fellow commissioners' comments, and I will also just say encourage the shutters because this specific house, its scale and character, it really is part of the original look of it, and it adds so much on these few houses and the couples next to it have shutters on them.
Okay, Commissioner Master.
Yes, I agree with Commissioner Holsworth-Smith's comments. I think they were very thorough. The only exception is that I'm actually okay with the excavation as it is the garden, and it's not adjacent to the building. I think this is appropriate.
Okay. Commissioner Jefferson.
With Commissioner Holsworth-Smith's comments, and in terms of the shutters. I didn't really look to see if there was any blockout shutters or not, but whatever the decision is, fine. In terms of the excavation, I think it's fine.
Okay. All right. So, Commissioner Hopkins, are you comfortable if we ask our engineer or DOB to do enhanced engineering? Okay, so then we can do an approval with modifications, supporting the work, except asking that the siding on the dormers be a wood or substitute material that looks like wood, and that the excavation be carefully reviewed, have an enhanced review.
In the matter of LPC 23-12-139-4 Grove Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District. A Federal style row house designed by James N. Wells and built in 1833-34. The application was to clad existing dormers, alter the roof line and add a dormer, and excavate the rear yard. I note that the building's style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Greenwich Village Historic District. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that artists' studio dormers have historically been added to buildings within the Greenwich Village Historic District over time. Therefore, the proposed shed dormer at the rear of the sloped roof will be in keeping with this historic precedent. That the shed dormer will be well scaled to the roof and not extend its full width, thereby maintaining a sense of the historic form and profile of the roof. That the shed dormer will only be minimally visible from the public thoroughfares, and its materials, configuration, details, and finishes will harmonize with the age and style of the house. The slight shift in the placement of the rear facade window openings will be a discrete change, which will not detract from the composition of the facade. But the rear yard is not aligned in grade level with the immediate neighbors and is larger separated from neighbor yards by a rear extension and increased on the wall. Therefore, the excavation to lower the entire rear yard will not diminish continuity of the central green space. And that the excavation will be designed and built in compliance with Department of Buildings regulations under the supervision of a licensed engineer to protect the building and adjacent buildings, and that it will receive enhanced review. However, I find that the proposed standing seam metal cladding at the sides of the historic front dormers will be highly visible and will not match or recall the historic with cladded siding, thereby detracting from the historic character of a significant architectural feature. Therefore, I recommend that the sides of the dormers be clad with painted wood or fiber cement clad siding.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second. Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Chapin. Mr. Chapin.
Sorry. Aye.
Commissioner Chen. Aye. Commissioner Chu. Aye. Commissioner Ginsburg. Aye. Commissioner Goldberg. Aye. Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye. Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
With 10 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
Okay, so that's approved. Please continue to work with the staff on the siding on the dormers. And again, as you heard, many commissioners would encourage the owners to consider shutters on the front facade. All right, so we're going to break for lunch. We are about an hour and a half behind schedule, so we will return promptly at 1:30 to resume with public hearing item number 4, and hopefully we'll be able to move more quickly through the afternoon.